I handed my son a check for $200,000 and sold the home I had built with my late wife just to be close to him. I thought I was buying a future with my family. But that same night, through the static of a forgotten baby monitor, I heard my daughter-in-law laugh. She called me a racial slur and outlined her plan to dump me in a state-run facility by Monday morning. She thought I was asleep. She thought I was helpless. She thought I was just another old man she could discard. She was wrong. Before I tell you how I destroyed their entire world without lifting a finger, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. My name is Melvin Carter. I am 68 years old, and until 3 days ago, I was a retired logistics manager who believed in the sanctity of blood relations. I had spent 40 years coordinating international shipments, managing millions of dollars in inventory, and solving problems that would make most men crumble. But nothing prepared me for the cold efficiency of my own son's betrayal. The nightmare began the moment my Uber pulled up to their driveway in an upscale suburb of Atlanta. I stood there staring at the 2-story colonial house. It was a beautiful structure, pristine white with black shutters, a symbol of the American dream, a dream I had just helped finance. My luggage sat heavy on the pavement beside me. 2 large suitcases containing the last 40 years of my life. I had sold the brownstone in the historic district, the house where my wife Ida and I had raised Terrence. It sold for $1.2 million cash. I hadn't told Terrence the final sale price. I wanted to surprise him. I had already wire transferred $200,000 to their joint account last week as a down payment for what I thought would be an in-law suite addition. I walked up the porch steps, my knees protesting slightly. I rang the bell. I expected a hug. I expected a welcome home banner, maybe even my favorite jazz record playing in the background. Instead, the door swung open and I was met with a barrier. Tiffany stood in the doorway, my daughter-in-law. She was a petite woman with blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail and eyes that always seemed to be calculating the cost of everything they touched. She didn't step back to let me in. She stood firm, blocking the entrance like a bouncer at a club I wasn't cool enough to enter. "Hi, Melvin," she said. Her voice was tight, lacking any warmth. "Leave the shoes on the porch. We just had the carpets professionally cleaned, and I cannot have outside dirt tracked in." I looked down at my polished dress shoes. They were cleaner than the welcome mat she was standing on, but I didn't argue. I bent down, unlaced them, and placed them neatly to the side. I picked up my suitcases and moved to step inside. "Stop," she commanded, pointing a manicured finger at the wheels of my luggage. "You can't roll those on the hardwood. You'll scratch the finish. Carry them. I am 68. I am strong, but these bags were heavy. I hoisted them up, straining my back, and shuffled into the foyer. The house smelled of lavender and expensive cleaning products. It was cold, not just the temperature, but the atmosphere. It felt like a museum, not a home. "Where is Terrence?" I asked, looking around for my son. "He is on a conference call," Tiffany said, checking her watch as if my presence was costing her money. "He can't be disturbed. Follow me." She didn't offer to help with a single bag. She turned on her heel and walked past the living room. I saw the plush cream sofas, the massive television, the fireplace that looked like it had never been used. I started to turn toward the hallway where the guest bedrooms were. "No Melvin down here," she called out. She opened a door off the kitchen. It was the door to the basement. I paused. The basement. But Terrence said the guest room on the second floor was ready. Tiffany let out a sigh that sounded like a tire deflating. "Plans changed. We are renovating the upstairs guest bath. It is a construction zone, dust everywhere. You wouldn't be able to breathe. We set you up downstairs. It is temporary." She flicked a switch and a single bulb illuminated a steep wooden staircase. I followed her down. The air grew cooler with every step. The smell of lavender was replaced by the scent of damp earth and unfinished concrete. When I reached the bottom, I looked around. It wasn't a finished basement. It was a storage area. There were boxes stacked high against the walls. In the corner, pushed up against the cinder blocks, was an old twin mattress on a metal frame. There was no headboard, no nightstand, just a mattress and a folding chair. The floor was bare concrete. There were no windows. "This is it?" I asked, my voice echoing in the empty space. "It is private," Tiffany said, crossing her arms. "You have your own space. You won't be in our way, and we won't be in yours. The bathroom is upstairs in the kitchen. Try not to use it at night if you can help it. The plumbing is loud, and it wakes up the baby." There was no baby. They didn't have children yet. She was talking about her dog, a neurotic poodle named Princess. I looked at the mattress. It was stained. It looked like something found on a curb. Tiffany, I just transferred $200,000 to your account for renovations. This is where that money went. She laughed a sharp, brittle sound. That money went to debts, Melvin, and securing the contractors. These things take time. Just be grateful you have a roof over your head. Most people your age are rotting in state homes. She turned and walked back up the stairs, her heels clicking loudly on the wood. I stood there in the silence of the basement. I didn't unpack. I sat on the folding chair and stared at the gray concrete wall. I felt a tightness in my chest, but it wasn't a heart attack. It was heartbreak. My wife Ida would have burned this house to the ground if she saw me being treated like this. But Ida was gone, and I was alone. Hours later, the door at the top of the stairs opened. Dinner, Tiffany yelled down. I slowly climbed the stairs. My joints ached from the cold. When I entered the kitchen, the smell of seared beef and garlic hit me. It smelled delicious. Terrence was sitting at the head of the table. He looked up when I entered, but his eyes didn't meet mine. He looked at his plate. "Hey, Dad," he mumbled. "Hello, son," I said. I pulled out the chair to his right. "No," Tiffany said sharply. "That is my seat. You sit there." She pointed to a stool at the kitchen island away from the dining table. They were eating at the table. I was relegated to the counter. I sat on the stool. Tiffany placed a plate in front of me. I looked down. On their plates, thick ribeye steaks, roasted asparagus, and truffle mashed potatoes. On my plate, a scoop of mushy white rice and a piece of boiled chicken that looked like it had been cooked 3 days ago. "What is this?" I asked, looking at the dry chicken. "It is healthy," Tiffany said, cutting into her bleeding steak. "Red meat is bad for your heart, Melvin. And spices upset old stomachs. We are looking out for your health. You have a sensitive constitution. I have never had a stomach issue in my life. I eat chili with jalapenos for breakfast." I looked at Terrence. He was cutting his steak, putting a large piece in his mouth and chewing vigorously. He wouldn't look at me. "Terrence," I said, my voice low. "Is this how it is going to be?" Terrence stopped chewing. He looked at his wife. Tiffany glared at him, a warning shot fired across the table. "Dad, just eat." Terrence said, his voice weak. Tiffany worked hard on dinner. "Don't be ungrateful. We are letting you live here." "Letting me live here," I wanted to scream. "I bought the roof you are sleeping under. I paid for the college degree that got you your job. I just gave you enough money to buy a Ferrari." But I didn't scream. I am a logistics man. I assess the situation. I identify the bottlenecks. I calculate the risks. Right now, I was in enemy territory without a secure supply line. Screaming would only reveal my position. I picked up the fork. I ate the dry chicken. It tasted like cardboard and humiliation. While I ate, they talked about their upcoming vacation. They were planning a trip to the Maldives, first class. "We really need this break," Tiffany said, sipping a glass of red wine that I recognized. It was a bottle from my personal collection, a 2015 Cabernet I had brought over in one of the boxes. She had opened it without asking. "It has been so stressful lately," she continued, "dealing with the move and everything. They ignored me completely. I was a ghost in the room, a ghost that paid the bills." After dinner, Tiffany pointed to the sink. "You can do the dishes, Melvin. Since you aren't paying rent, you can contribute with labor. It is only fair." I looked at the pile of greasy pans. I looked at my son, who was already retreating to the living room to watch football. "Fine," I said. I washed their dishes. I scrubbed the fat from their steak dinner off the plates while my stomach rumbled from the meager rice. I wiped down the counters. I took out the trash. When I was done, Tiffany didn't say thank you. She just pointed to the basement door. "Lights out at 10, she said. "We need our rest." I went back down to the dungeon. It was freezing now. The night air had settled into the concrete. I didn't have a blanket. I opened my suitcase and pulled out my heavy winter coat. I laid it over the thin mattress. I sat there in the dark, the single bulb turned off to save their electricity. My mind was racing. I had a check in my jacket pocket, a cashier's check for $1 million, the remaining proceeds from my house sale. I had intended to deposit it into their account on Monday morning. I had intended to secure their future, to make sure my grandchildren, whenever they arrived, would never want for anything. Now that check felt like a weapon. I couldn't sleep. The silence of the basement was oppressive. My eyes adjusted to the gloom. I noticed a small green light blinking on a shelf near the ceiling. I stood up and walked over to it. It was a baby monitor, an old audio unit. It must have been left over from the previous owners, or maybe they bought it for the dog. It was dusty, but it was plugged in and the power light was on. I realized with a jolt that the other unit must be upstairs. They were monitoring me. They wanted to make sure I wasn't snooping, or maybe they just wanted to ensure I stayed in my cage. I reached out to unplug it, but then I stopped. I heard a sound coming from the speaker. It was a voice, Tiffany's voice. The monitor wasn't just transmitting my sound to them, it was a two-way system, and the channel was open. They had left the receiver on in their bedroom, and they were close enough to it that I could hear them. I pressed my ear against the plastic speaker. Can't believe he actually ate that garbage, Tiffany was saying. Her voice was clear, followed by the rustle of sheets. He is pathetic, Terrence replied. I almost felt bad when he looked at my steak. Almost. Don't be soft, Tiffany snapped. He is a leech. He has been dragging you down your whole life. He gave us $200,000, Terrence said. That is rent, Tiffany countered. Back pay for all the years you had to deal with his expectations. Besides, that is just the appetizer. What do you mean the big check, Terry? The house sold for over $1 million. I saw the paperwork in his bag when he went to the bathroom. He is carrying a check for $1 million. I froze. She had gone through my things. So we get the check on Monday, Terrence asked. We get the check, Tiffany confirmed. We get him to sign it over for investment purposes. And then we make the move. The move. The facility, Terry. I found one in rural Georgia. It is state-funded, cheapest one I could find. It smells like urine and boiled cabbage, so he will fit right in. Tiffany. That is harsh. He is my dad. He is a burden, she hissed. I am not living with a senile old black man in my basement, Terry. I don't want his smell in my house. I don't want his friends coming over. I don't want to hear his old jazz music. He doesn't fit our aesthetic. He doesn't fit our life. We take the money, we dump him on Monday afternoon, and we tell everyone he demanded to be with people his own age. But what if he refuses? He won't refuse. We have his money. Without it, he is nothing. He is homeless. We control the narrative. By Tuesday, we will be booking the Maldives, and he will be eating Jell-O in a shared room with a guy named Bubba. She laughed then, a cruel, victorious laugh that echoed through the plastic speaker and pierced my soul. I love you, babe, Terrence said. You are so smart. I know, she replied. Now turn off the light. I want to dream about spending his money. The transmission went silent, save for the rhythmic static. I stood there in the darkness of the basement, my hand gripping the shelf so hard my knuckles ached. The tears I had been holding back evaporated. The sadness was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. They thought I was senile. They thought I was weak. They thought I was just an old man they could milk dry and discard like trash. They forgot who I was. I was the man who coordinated logistics for the Gulf War. I was the man who navigated the corporate ladder in the 80s when men like me weren't welcomed in the boardroom. I was the man who built a fortune from nothing. I reached into my pocket and touched the edge of the check. $1 million. They wanted to play a game fine. I would play. But they didn't know the rules. I looked at my watch. It was 3:00 a.m. I didn't turn on the light. I moved by memory and moonlight. I opened my suitcases. I took out my documents, my passport, the check, my bank ledger. I repacked my clothes. I moved silently, the years of logistical training taking over. Efficiency, stealth, execution. I walked up the basement stairs. The door was unlocked. I crept into the kitchen. The house was silent. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator. I saw the keys to the new Mercedes SUV hanging on the hook. The Mercedes they bought last week. Using the money I had wired them. Technically, my name was on the title as a co-signer because Terrence's credit was shot. I took the keys. I took a piece of paper from the notepad on the counter. I pulled a pen from my pocket. I wrote a single line. I placed the note on the granite countertop right next to the empty bottle of my expensive wine. I walked out the front door. The morning air was crisp. I loaded my bags into the Mercedes. I adjusted the mirrors. I started the engine. It purred like a beast. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look back at the bedroom window where my son slept, dreaming of my demise. I drove away. I drove straight to a 24-hour diner on the highway. I ordered coffee and a full breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, grits. I ate like a king. Then I waited for the banks to open. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, I walked into the main branch of my bank. I sat down with the branch manager, an old friend named Sarah, Melvin. She said, surprised to see me, "How can I help you?" "I need to make some changes, Sarah," I said. "Serious changes." I deposited the $1 million check into a new account. An account solely in my name with strict instructions that no power of attorney could access it without my physical presence and a biometric scan. Then I addressed the $200,000. "I want to recall the wire transfer I sent last week," I said. "Melvin, that is difficult," Sarah warned. "It has already cleared. It was sent under fraudulent pretenses," I said calmly, "and the account it went to is a joint account where I am a signatory, correct?" "Technically, yes. I had been added to their account years ago to help Terrence build credit. They had forgotten to remove me." "Good," I said. "Freeze it. Freeze the entire account. Mark it for fraud investigation." "Done," Sarah said, typing rapidly. "Next, the car." I called the dealership. I reported the vehicle stolen, number one. I reported that I was repossessing my property as the primary lien holder. I had paid for it after all. I was just taking it for a long drive. Finally, I called my lawyer, Regina Holt. She was the shark of Atlanta family law. "Regina," I said when she picked up, "I need you to draft an eviction notice and a restraining order." "Who is the target, Mel?" "My son and his wife." I hung up the phone and checked into the Ritz-Carlton downtown. I booked the presidential suite. I sat on the balcony overlooking the city, sipping a fresh cup of coffee. My phone started ringing. It was Terrence, then Tiffany, then Terrence again. I let it ring. I watched the screen light up with their names. Message from Tiffany. "Where's the car?" "The accounts are frozen." "What did you do?" Message from Terrence. "Dad, please call me. We can't buy groceries. The cards are declined." "Where are you?" I took a sip of coffee. I picked up the phone. I typed a reply to Tiffany. "I bought some cigarettes. Don't wait up for me. By the way, check the basement. I left you a tip." I imagined them running down to the basement. I imagined them finding the note I left on the folding chair. The note read, "I heard everything on the monitor. The nursing home called. They have a bed available. It is for you. Rent is due on the 1st. I leaned back and watched the sun rise over Atlanta. The war had begun, and General Carter was just getting started. I knew exactly how the morning played out in that house, even though I was miles away enjoying a hot cup of artisanal coffee. At 7 in the morning, Tiffany would have come down the stairs. She would be wearing her silk robe, the one she bought with my money. She would have her list of chores ready: mow the lawn, clean the gutters, scrub the patio. She expected to find a broken old man sleeping on a dirty mattress in her basement. She expected to kick the door open and bark orders. I can imagine her hand reaching for the knob. She probably didn't even knock. Why would she knock for a burden? She swung the door open and prepared to yell. But the words died in her throat. The room was empty. It was not just empty of people. It was empty of life. The mattress was stripped bare. The floor was swept clean. The folding chair was folded and leaned precisely against the wall. There was no luggage. There were no clothes. There was no smell of the old man she despised. It was as if I had never been there. It was a vacuum, a void. The only thing left in the room was the silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that screamed louder than any shout. She must have spun around looking for a note or a sign. She found nothing but the dust motes dancing in the single beam of light from the hallway. I had erased myself from their narrative before they even woke up. I executed my departure with the same precision I used to move cargo across the Atlantic. It was 3 in the morning when I woke up. I did not need an alarm. The rage simmering in my gut was enough to wake the dead. I sat up on that thin mattress and looked at my watch. 300 hours. Time to move. I did not panic. Panic is for amateurs. Panic causes mistakes. I stood up and stretched my back. My joints popped, but I felt stronger than I had in years. I opened my suitcases. I did not just throw things in. I organized them. Shirts on the left, trousers on the right, documents in the hidden compartment. I pulled out my checkbook. Tucked inside was a second check. This one was personal. It was written for $200,000. I had written it yesterday morning before I arrived. It was meant to be a gift for furniture and decoration. I wanted them to have the best. I looked at the blue paper. I looked at my son's name written in my careful handwriting. Terrence Carter. A man who let his wife feed me garbage while he ate steak. A man who planned to lock me away. I took the check between my fingers. The sound of the paper tearing was the only noise in the basement. Rip, rip, rip. I did not throw the pieces on the floor. I would not leave them a puzzle to solve. I put the confetti in my pocket. I would burn it later. I checked the room one last time. I wiped down the chair. I smoothed the mattress cover. I I wanted them to see that I was not messy. I was not senile. I was disciplined. I picked up my bags. They felt lighter now. I walked up the stairs, avoiding the creaky third step I had identified earlier. I moved through their kitchen like a ghost. I saw the remnants of their dinner in the trash. I saw the empty bottle of my wine on the counter. I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down. Emotions are a liability during an operation. I unlocked the front door and stepped out into the cool Atlanta night. The air tasted like freedom. I walked down the driveway to the waiting black SUV. The driver opened the door. I slid into the leather seat. "Drive," I said, and just like that I was gone. Now it was 8 in the morning. I was sitting in the back of the SUV watching the city wake up through tinted windows. My phone began to vibrate. It buzzed against the leather seat like an angry hornet. I looked at the screen. Terrence. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I took a sip of my coffee. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Then a text message popped up. "Dad, where are you?" Then another. "Tiffany is freaking out." I waited. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted the panic to set in. I wanted them to realize that the ATM had walked out the door. The phone rang a third time. I slid my finger across the screen and answered. I did not say hello. I just listened. "Dad, where are you?" Terrence sounded breathless. He sounded like a child who had lost his mother in the supermarket. "We went downstairs and you were gone. The basement is empty. Did you go for a walk? You need to tell us when you leave. You cannot just wander off." His voice was trembling. He was not worried about my safety. He was worried about the asset. He was worried about the $1 million walking around unsupervised. I looked out the window at the passing skyline. I kept my voice flat, unemotional. "I went to the store, Terrence." "The store? Why? We have food here." Tiffany bought plenty of food. Plenty of boiled chicken, I thought. I cleared my throat. "I went to buy cigarettes." "Cigarettes? You do not smoke, Dad. You quit 30 years ago." I started again, I said. "It has been a stressful 24 hours. Dad, come back right now. Tiffany is really upset. She thinks you got lost. She is about to call the police." "Tell her not to bother," I said. "I am fine. I just needed some fresh air." There was a scuffling sound on the other end of the line, a hand grabbing the phone. Then her voice pierced my ear, sharp, shrill, demanding. "Melvin, you listen to me." It was Tiffany. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask why I left. She went straight for the jugular. "You get your ass back here right now. We have an appointment at the bank in an hour. You have to sign the deposit papers for the check." I smiled. There it was. The only thing that mattered. "I am not coming back right now, Tiffany," I said calmly. "The line at the store is long. Stop playing games, Melvin. You are confusing me. You are acting erratic. See, this is exactly why you cannot live alone. You wander off. You buy things you do not need. You are having an episode." She was building her case. She was recording her narrative. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, plotting how to use this phone call to prove my incompetence. "I am not having an episode, Tiffany," I said. "I am having a moment of clarity." "What is that supposed to mean?" she snapped. "Where are you? Send me your location." I leaned back in the seat. The leather was soft. The music in the car was low and soothing. "Do not wait up for me," I said. "Melvin, do not you dare hang up on me. You have a check for $1 million in your bag. That is family money. You are not competent to walk around with that kind of cash. If you do not come back in 10 minutes, I am reporting you as a missing endangered person. I will have the police drag you back here." Her voice rose to a scream. I could hear Terrence in the background pleading with her to calm down. "Tiffany," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "I suggest you check the kitchen counter before you call anyone." "What? What is on the counter?" I hung up the phone. I turned it off. I tossed it onto the seat beside me. I looked at the driver. "Turn up the music," I said. I love this song. I closed my eyes and imagined Tiffany running to the kitchen. I imagined her finding the keys to her new Mercedes SUV that I had taken. I imagined her realizing that her car was gone. And I imagined her face when she realized that the check for the renovations, the $200,000 she thought was hers, had been canceled the moment the bank opened its doors. The game had changed, and they did not even know the rules. The glass doors of the First National Bank slid open with a smooth mechanical hum. I walked through them not as the shuffling old man my son thought I was, but as Melvin Carter, the man who had managed supply chains for half the eastern seaboard. I was wearing a charcoal suit I had purchased an hour ago at a boutique downtown. It cost $3,000. It fit me like armor. I did not look at the line of people waiting for the tellers. I walked straight past the velvet ropes toward the glass office at the back. A young security guard stepped forward to intercept me, but I simply held up a hand and kept walking. My eyes were fixed on the woman sitting behind the mahogany desk inside the office. Mrs. Henderson, the branch manager, looked up. Her eyes went wide. She stood up immediately. "Melvin," she said, "I haven't seen you in person in years. You look different." "I look like myself again," I said. I sat down in the leather chair opposite her. I did not smile. I did not exchange pleasantries about the weather or her grandchildren. I placed my new driver's license and my passport on the desk. "I need to make some immediate changes to my accounts," I said. Mrs. Henderson sensed the shift in the atmosphere. She sat down slowly and folded her hands. "Of course, Melvin. What do you need?" "First, I need to revoke all power of attorney authorizations on my accounts, specifically any authority granted to Terrence Carter." She typed into her computer. "Done," she said. "Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said. "I want to flag a transaction for fraud investigation." She stopped typing. Her face grew serious. "Fraud is a strong word, Melvin. Which transaction?" "The wire transfer of $200,000 sent last week to the joint account of Terrence and Tiffany Carter." Mrs. Henderson frowned. "But Melvin, you authorized that transfer. You signed the paperwork yourself." I leaned forward. "I authorized it under duress and false pretenses," I said. "I was told the funds were for a specific investment in property improvement for my living quarters. I have since discovered that the funds were misappropriated for personal debts and luxury purchases while I was forced to live in a basement storage room. That is elder financial abuse." The color drained from her face. "Elder abuse is a mandatory reporting event for banks." She knew the protocol. She knew the implications. "I want the funds frozen," I continued. "I want an immediate clawback request sent to the receiving bank. I want that account locked down until an investigation is complete." "Melvin," she whispered, "this will freeze their assets. If they have automatic payments set up for their mortgage or their cars, everything will bounce. It could destroy their credit rating." I looked her dead in the eye. "That is not my problem. My problem is protecting my capital." "Do it," she typed. The keys clicked like gunshots in the quiet office. "It is done," she said. "The request has been sent. The account is frozen pending investigation." "Good," I said. "One more thing. Cancel every credit card linked to my Social Security number. Any authorized user cards that might exist. Cut them off. Now." She nodded and hit the final key. I stood up. I felt lighter. The first strike had been launched. It was silent. It was invisible. And it was devastating. While I was walking out of the bank feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, Tiffany was lying on a heated massage table at the Serenity Spa in Buckhead. I knew her schedule. She had bragged about this appointment on the phone with her friend while I was cleaning her dishes the night before. She called it her self-care day, a reward for dealing with the stress of moving me in. She had ordered the diamond package. It included a gold leaf facial, a hot stone massage, and a champagne lunch. The total cost was $5,000. She was spending my money to wash away the stress of my existence. I can imagine her lying there wrapped in a plush white robe, sipping crystal flutes of champagne, feeling like the Queen of Atlanta. She probably posted a photo on social media, something about blessings and hard work. She had no idea that the ground beneath her had already crumbled. She walked to the front desk, her skin glowing from the expensive creams. She reached into her designer bag. She pulled out the credit card. It was a platinum card. It was technically mine, but she had convinced Terrence to add her as an authorized user years ago for emergencies. This was her definition of an emergency. She handed the card to the receptionist with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Add a 20% tip," she said without looking at the bill. The receptionist smiled and swiped the card. The machine beeped. A harsh, dissonant sound. The receptionist frowned. "I am sorry, ma'am, it says declined." Tiffany laughed. "That is impossible. It is a platinum card. It has no limit. Try it again. You probably swiped it wrong." The receptionist swiped it again. Beep. Declined. Do not honor. The smile on the receptionist's face began to fade. It was replaced by a look of cool suspicion. "Ma'am, it is declined again. The instruction is to confiscate the card." "Confiscate it!" Tiffany shrieked. Her voice echoed through the Zen lobby, causing other patrons to look up from their herbal tea. "You will do no such thing. That is my card. There must be a system error. Call the bank." "I cannot call the bank, ma'am," the receptionist said, her voice turning icy. "Do you have another form of payment?" Tiffany dug through her purse. She pulled out a debit card. This was linked to the joint account, the account I had just frozen 20 minutes ago. "Use this one," she snapped, throwing it on the counter. "And hurry up, I have places to be." The receptionist inserted the chip. The machine thought for a moment. Then it beeped again. "Declined." The receptionist said loud enough for the ladies in the waiting area to hear. "Account frozen." Tiffany's face went from glowing pink to a pale ash gray. "Frozen? What do you mean frozen?" "It means the bank has locked the funds, ma'am. We cannot process the payment. The total is $5,200. We need payment now." "I do not have that kind of cash on me," Tiffany stammered. Her arrogance was evaporating, replaced by pure panic. "Then you cannot leave," the receptionist said. She pressed a button under the desk. Two large men in black suits appeared from the back office. They were not the massage therapists. They were security. "You need to pay for services rendered, ma'am," the receptionist said, "or we will have to call the police. Theft of services is a felony at this amount." Tiffany looked at the security guards. She looked at the other women staring at her with judgment. She realized she was trapped. She was wearing a $2,000 outfit, but she could not pay for a glass of water. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She dialed Terrence. "Pick up, pick up, pick up," she hissed. Finally, he answered. "Hey, babe, how was the massage?" "Shut up," Tiffany screamed into the phone. "Shut up and listen to me. I am at the spa. The cards are not working. All of them. They are declined. They say the account is frozen. They are threatening to call the cops, Terrence. They have security guards standing over me like I am a criminal." "What?" Terrence sounded confused. "What do you mean, frozen?" "I just tried to buy gas and the pump rejected the card. I thought it was a chip error." "It is not an error, you idiot," Tiffany yelled. "It is him. It is your father. He did something. He shut us down," Dad Terrence said. "But how? He is senile. He doesn't even know how to use the banking app." "He played us," Tiffany shrieked. "He played us for fools. You need to get down here right now with cash. Bring the emergency cash from the safe." "We spent the emergency cash on the down payment for the boat," Terrence said, his voice small. "Then sell something," Tiffany screamed. "I do not care what you do. Get me out of here, and then you are going to find your father." She lowered her voice to a venomous whisper, but the receptionist heard every word. "You are going to find him, Terrence. You are going to drag him back to the house. I do not care if you have to tie him up. You make him fix this. You make him unlock the money. Because if I go to jail over a massage, Terrence, I swear to God I will divorce you before the handcuffs are even on my wrists. I will take everything. I will ruin you. Do you hear me? Fix this now." She hung up the phone and looked at the security guards. She tried to muster her old arrogance, but it fell flat. "My husband is on his way," she said, her voice trembling. The receptionist did not smile. "You can wait in the office," she said, pointing to a small room away from the luxury lobby. "And leave the robe here." Tiffany was marched into the back office like a shoplifter. She sat on a hard plastic chair, humiliation burning her skin. She realized then that the money, the power, the lifestyle, it was all an illusion. It was all mine. And I had just turned the lights off. It was 2 p.m. when the heavy oak door of the presidential suite vibrated with a frantic pounding. I did not rush to answer it. I was sitting in a velvet armchair by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the Atlanta traffic crawl like ants far below. I took a slow sip of the 1982 Bordeaux I had ordered from room service. It tasted like oak and history. It tasted like the life I had denied myself for too long. The pounding came again, louder this time, accompanied by a muffled shout. "Dad, I know you are in there. Open the door." I stood up slowly. I smoothed the lapels of my new Italian suit. It was a charcoal gray wool tailored to perfection, hugging my shoulders in a way my old windbreaker never did. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. The man staring back was not the hunched figure who slept in a basement. This man was tall. This man was imposing. This man was Melvin Carter, and he was ready for war. I opened the door. Terrence stood in the hallway. He looked like a wreck. His polo shirt was stained with sweat. His hair was disheveled, as if he had been running his hands through it for hours. His face was pale, contrasting sharply with the redness in his eyes. He looked at me, and his mouth fell open. He blinked once, then twice, trying to reconcile the image in front of him with the father he thought he knew. He looked at the suit. He looked at the silk tie. He looked at the glass of wine in my hand. "Dad," he stammered. "What is this? You look rich." I stepped back and gestured for him to enter. I did not offer him a hug. I did not offer him a drink. I simply walked back to my armchair and sat down, crossing my legs. "Hello, Terrence," I said. My voice was calm, level, and cold. "Close the door behind you. You are letting the air conditioning out." He walked into the suite, his eyes darting around the room, taking in the crystal chandelier, the grand piano, the fresh flowers on the mahogany table. He looked like a thief who had stumbled into a palace. "Dad, we have been looking everywhere for you," he said, his voice rising in pitch. "Tiffany is at the police station right now trying to file a report, but they told her you are a grown man and can do what you want. The bank accounts are frozen. The cards are declined. They took Tiffany's card at the spa, Dad. They humiliated her. You have to fix this. You have to call the bank right now." I swirled the wine in my glass. I watched the red liquid coat the sides. "I am not calling anyone, Terrence," I said. "The accounts are frozen because I flagged them for fraud investigation. And considering you tried to spend $5,000 on a massage while I was eating boiled chicken, I think the investigation will be very short." "Fraud," Terrence shouted. "It is not fraud. We are family. That money is for us. It is for our future." I took a sip of wine. "It was my money, Terrence. I earned it. I saved it. And I decided how it is spent. And right now I decided that spending it on you is a bad investment." Terrence paced the room, his hands shaking. He looked at the check lying on the side table. The check for $1 million. I had left it there intentionally. Bait for a rat. He lunged for it, but I did not move. I just looked at him. He stopped inches from the table, his hand hovering over the paper. "Don't," I said. He froze. He looked at me, and for the first time he saw the steel in my eyes. He saw the man who had raised him, the man who had disciplined him, the man who demanded respect. He pulled his hand back. "Dad, please," he whispered, and suddenly the anger drained out of him, leaving only a hollow, desperate panic. He collapsed onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "You do not understand. We need that money. We need it today." "Why?" I asked. "Why do you need $1 million today, Terrence? You have a job. You have a house. You have a new car. Why the desperation?" He began to sob. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook his shoulders. It was pathetic. It was the sound of a man who had never been told no. "I lost it. Dad," he choked out. "I lost everything. Speak clearly," I commanded. He looked up, his face wet with tears and snot. "Crypto, Dad. And options trading. I thought I could double our savings. I thought I was smart. I leveraged everything. The market crashed last month. I got margin called. I lost our savings. I lost the retirement accounts. I lost everything." I listened, my face impassive. "So you are broke," I said. "That explains why you needed my pension. But that does not explain why you need $1 million right now." "It gets worse," he whispered. "I didn't just lose our cash, Dad. I leveraged the house." "You have a mortgage," I said. "That is normal." "No, Dad. I took out a second mortgage. A hard money loan. Private lenders. The kind who do not ask questions but charge 20% interest. I forged the appraisal documents to get more equity out. I owe them $450,000. And the note is due. It was a balloon payment. It is due next week. If I do not pay, they take the house." He looked at me with pleading eyes. "If they take the house, we are on the street. And I could go to jail for the document fraud. That is why we needed you to move in. That is why we needed the check. The $200,000 was just to pay the interest and keep them off my back for a month. But the $1 million would save my life. It would pay off the loan. It would fix everything." I sat there processing this information. He hadn't just been greedy. He had been criminally stupid. He had gambled his life away, and when the bill came due, he decided to sacrifice me to pay it. "I have one question, Terrence," I said, leaning forward, "and I want you to think very carefully before you answer because the future of our relationship depends on it." He nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Anything, Dad." "Does Tiffany know?" He froze. He looked away. He looked at the floor. He looked at the ceiling. Does she know? He took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, she knows. When did she know? From the beginning, he whispered. It was her idea to ask you to move in. When I told her about the debt, she said we had one asset left. You. She said you had the house equity. She said if we got you to sell, we could take the proceeds and clear the debt. She said... He stopped, realizing he was digging his own grave. Go on, I said, cold as ice. What did she say? She said we just had to tolerate you for a few weeks. He admitted, his voice barely a whisper. She said we could get the money, put you in a home, and tell everyone you got sick. She said it was the only way to save our lifestyle. There it was. The confession, the smoking gun. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just her. It was a partnership. A conspiracy. They had sat down at their granite island, probably drinking my wine, and plotted how to harvest me like a crop. They didn't see a father. They saw a liquidity event. I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. I felt a profound sadness, not for myself, but for him. He was weak, he was broken, and he was no longer my son. He was a stranger who shared my last name. Dad, Terrence pleaded from the sofa. Please, you have the money. It is right there. Just sign it over. We will pay you back. I swear. I will get a second job. We will treat you better. You can have the upstairs room. Just save us. Please, Dad. I am your son. I turned around. I looked at him one last time. I looked at the man I had taught to ride a bike, the man I had taught to tie a tie, the man I had sat beside in the hospital when he broke his arm in the 3rd grade. That boy was gone. This man was a parasite. I am not giving you the money, Terrence, I said. He gasped. But Dad, we will lose the house. Then you lose the house, I said. You made a bet. You lost. Now you pay the table. He stood up, his face flushing with anger and panic. You can't do this. You are my father. You owe me this. Mom would have given it to me. Do not speak her name, I roared. My voice filled the suite, shaking the crystals in the chandelier. Your mother would be ashamed of you. She would be disgusted. You conspired to lock her husband away. You fed me garbage. You stole my dignity, and now you want my money. Get out. Dad, please. Get out, Terrence, before I call security and have you dragged out. He looked at me and saw that the door was closed. There was no negotiation. There was no mercy. He grabbed his keys and ran out of the room, slamming the heavy door behind him. I stood in the silence of the suite. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I was not done. Not by a long shot. He thought losing the house was the worst thing that could happen. He was wrong. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had saved years ago. A number for emergencies. Regina Holt answered on the 2nd ring. Mel, she said, her voice sharp and professional. I received your message about the restraining order. It is being drafted. Good, I said. But I have a new instruction. A priority instruction. Tell me, Mel, my son has a hard money loan on his primary residence. A second mortgage. It is distressed. The lender is likely looking to foreclose. Okay, Regina said slowly. What do you want to do? I want you to find out who holds the note, I said. I want you to find the lender. Today. Within the hour. And then what, Mel? I want you to buy it, I said. I want you to buy the debt. I want you to purchase the mortgage note from the lender. Offer them full value plus a premium for immediate transfer. Use the funds in my new account. There was a silence on the line. Regina was a smart woman. She understood immediately what I was doing. Mel, she said, if you buy the note, you become the lender. You become the one who holds the mortgage on your son's house. Exactly, I said. And if the note is in default, Regina continued, which it sounds like it is, you will have the right to foreclose. You will have the right to evict them. I know the law, Regina, I said. That is exactly what I intend to do. I do not want to save his house. I want to own it, and I want to be the one who puts the padlock on the door. Mel, that is nuclear, Regina said. That is scorched earth. They tried to bury me, Regina, I said, looking at the check on the table. They tried to bury me in a basement and leave me to rot. Now they are going to learn that when you bury a seed, it grows. Find the lender, Regina, buy the note, and draft the foreclosure notice. I want it served on Monday morning. Consider it done, Mel, Regina said. I hung up the phone. I walked over to the table and picked up the check. $1 million. It wasn't just money anymore. It was ammunition, and I had just pulled the trigger. The text message arrived on Tuesday afternoon. It was from Tiffany. It was not a demand for money or a threat of legal action. It was an invitation. Melvin, we want to make peace. Please come to dinner tonight. My parents are in town and they really want to meet you. We are making a roast. Let us start over. I stared at the screen of my new phone in the quiet luxury of the Ritz-Carlton suite. A roast. My favorite meal was pot roast. Ida used to make it every Sunday. Tiffany knew that. She was playing the nostalgia card. She was trying to lure the mouse back into the trap with a piece of high-quality cheese. I knew it was a trap. Of course I knew. But curiosity is a powerful motivator. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to see how they would try to manipulate me now that the direct approach had failed. And more importantly, I wanted to meet the Worthingtons. I wanted to see the stock my son had married into. I dressed with deliberate care. I chose a navy blazer, a crisp white shirt, and a silk pocket square. I looked like a man who owned the bank, not a man begging for a loan. I took a cab to the house I had effectively paid for. When I arrived, there were 2 cars in the driveway, Terrence's older sedan and a rented Cadillac. The Worthingtons had arrived in style. I rang the bell. This time, Tiffany opened the door. She was wearing an apron over a floral dress. Her hair was down. She looked like a 1950s housewife. It was a costume. "Melvin," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetener. "I am so glad you came. Please come in." She stepped aside. I walked in. I did not take off my shoes. I walked straight onto the hardwood floor. In the living room, sitting on my leather sofa, were 2 people who looked like they had been cut out of a country club brochure. Mr. Worthington was a large man with a red face and white hair. He wore a beige suit that looked expensive but dated. Mrs. Worthington was thin with hair dyed a shade of blonde that did not exist in nature. She was holding a glass of white wine. They stopped talking when I entered. Their eyes scanned me up and down. I saw the confusion. They were expecting the senile old man Tiffany had described. They were expecting a charity case in worn-out clothes. Instead, they saw a man who was better dressed than their son-in-law. Terrence stood up from the corner. He looked nervous. He looked like a man standing on a landmine. "Dad," he said, "these are Tiffany's parents, George and Linda Worthington." George did not stand up. He extended a hand from his seated position. A power move. I did not take it. I nodded once. "A pleasure," I said. George pulled his hand back. He cleared his throat. "We have heard a lot about you, Melvin," he said. His voice was loud. He spoke to me as if I were hard of hearing. "Tiffany tells us you have been having a rough time adjusting." I looked at Tiffany. She was busy smoothing her apron, avoiding my gaze. "Adjusting is one word for it," I said. Linda took a sip of her wine. "Well, it is good of you to join us. We were just telling Terrence how generous it is of them to open their home to family. Not many young couples would take on such a responsibility." Responsibility. There it was. The narrative. I was the burden. They were the saints. "Dinner is ready," Tiffany announced quickly, sensing the tension. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, my china. The set Ida had bought for our 25th anniversary. Tiffany had dug it out of the boxes. I sat down. This time there was a place setting for me at the table. No stool at the counter. The food was brought out. A roast beef, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots. It looked perfect. Too perfect. It looked like it came from a high-end caterer. Tiffany could not cook like this. We began to eat. The conversation was a minefield of passive aggression. So Melvin George said, chewing loudly, "What did you do before you retired?" Tiffany said you worked in a warehouse. "I managed global logistics for a supply chain firm," I corrected him. "I oversaw imports from 3 continents." George laughed. "Logistics. That is a fancy word for moving boxes, right? I was in real estate, commercial, built half the strip malls in this county. That is real work. Building things, leaving a legacy." I cut my meat. It was tender. Definitely catered. "Legacy is important," I agreed. "That is why I worked so hard to secure my family's future," Linda chimed in. "Yes, well, money isn't everything, Melvin. It is about family values. That is what we taught Tiffany. To be kind, to be charitable." She looked at her daughter with adoring eyes. "Tiffany has such a big heart," Linda continued. "When she told us she was going to care for you, we were worried. We told her, honey, you are just starting your marriage. An elderly parent is a lot of work. They can be difficult. They get confused. They forget things. She looked at me and smiled a tight, pitying smile, but she insisted. She said, "Mom, he has nowhere else to go. We have to do it. She is an angel, really." I looked at Tiffany, the angel who had fed me boiled chicken and planned to dump me in a state facility. She was staring at her plate, her face pale. "It must be hard for you, Melvin," Linda went on, "to lose your independence, to have to rely on your children for everything, even a roof over your head. But you should not feel ashamed. It happens to many people in your community." My knife scraped against the china. The sound was sharp. "My community?" I asked. "You know," Linda waved her hand vaguely. "People from your background. Not everyone has the same opportunities to build generational wealth like George and I did. It is nice that Terrence has done so well for himself. He must have gotten his ambition from somewhere else." The insult was wrapped in silk, but it cut deep. She was saying I was poor. She was saying I was a failure. She was saying my son succeeded in spite of me, not because of me. Terrence choked on his water. "Mom, Linda, please," he stammered. "Dad did well. He helped us a lot." "Oh, I am sure he did what he could," Linda said dismissively. "But let us be honest. Maintaining a house like this takes a certain level of resources. Resources a pensioner simply does not have." George nodded. "That is why we think the nursing home idea is actually quite sensible, Melvin." I stopped eating. I put my fork down. "The nursing home idea," I repeated. "Yes," George said. "Tiffany mentioned they found a lovely state facility. We know the director actually, or we know of him. It is clean. You would be with your own kind. People with similar life experiences. You wouldn't be a burden on the young ones. They need their privacy. They need to focus on their future." Tiffany dropped her fork. "Dad, stop," she hissed. "No, let him speak," I said. "I want to hear this." George wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Look, Melvin, let us be men here. You had a good run, but you are done. You sold your little house. You have nothing left. You are eating their food. You are sleeping under their roof. It is time to step aside. Let them enjoy their money. Let them live. It is the noble thing to do." Linda nodded in agreement. "We just want what is best for everyone." Tiffany is too polite to say it, but she is exhausted. She works so hard to keep this house beautiful. Having to care for a senile guest is just too much. "Senile," I said softly. "Well, forgetful," Linda corrected with a fake smile. "Tiffany told us about the baby monitor incident, how you got confused and left in the middle of the night, wandering the streets. It is dangerous, Melvin. Next time you might not find your way back. You need professional supervision." I looked around the table. George, the arrogant builder who thought he owned the world. Linda, the ice queen who covered her prejudice with fake concern. Terrence, the coward who let them insult his father in his own house. And Tiffany, the architect of my destruction. They were all looking at me, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to agree, waiting for me to accept my place as the grateful charity case. They thought they held all the cards. They thought I was broke, homeless, and losing my mind. I picked up my wine glass. I took a slow, deliberate sip. "The dinner is delicious, Tiffany," I said. "The caterer did an excellent job." Tiffany flinched. "And George, Linda, thank you for your concern about my living situation," I continued. "It is truly touching. You have given me a lot to think about." George nodded, satisfied. "See? He is reasonable." "You are right about one thing, George," I said. "Legacy is important. And you are right, Linda, money isn't everything, but it certainly gives you options." I reached into the inner pocket of my blazer. I pulled out a folded document. It was a receipt, a donation receipt. I unfolded it and smoothed it out on the table next to the roast beef. "You mentioned that I sold my little house," I said. "You are correct. I did. It sold for $1.2 million. George's eyes bulged. $1.2 million, he repeated. "For that old brownstone. Gentrification is a powerful thing, George," I said. "Location is everything. You, of all people, should know that." I looked at Tiffany. She was shaking her head slightly, mouthing the word no. "I had a check for $1 million in my pocket yesterday," I said. "The remaining proceeds, after I paid off some debts, I intended to give it to Terrence and Tiffany, to help them with this house, to secure their future." Linda gasped. $1 million, she whispered. Her eyes lit up with greed. "Well, that changes things. If you have that kind of capital, you could build a guest house. You could hire a nurse. You wouldn't have to leave. I raised a hand to stop her. I intended to give it to them, I repeated. But then I realized something important. Something you said tonight, Linda, really stuck with me. You said I should be with my own kind. You said I should help my community. I tapped the paper on the table. So this morning I made a decision. I took that $1 million check and I donated it. Silence. Absolute vacuum like silence. Donated it, Terrence whispered. Dad, what do you mean? I gave it away, son. All of it. I endowed a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth in the inner city, specifically for young black men who want to study logistics and supply chain management. I wanted to give them the opportunities I had to fight for. I looked at George. I wanted to help people from my background, George, just like you suggested. Tiffany let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. You gave away $1 million. You gave away our money. It was never your money, Tiffany, I said coldly. It was my money, and now it belongs to the future. George's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. You are lying, he sputtered. You are bluffing. No one is that stupid. You didn't give away $1 million to some charity. I pushed the receipt across the table. Read it, George. It is tax deductible, though I suppose that doesn't help you much. George grabbed the paper. His hands were shaking. He read it. He dropped it like it was burning. He did it, Linda, he whispered. He actually did it. $1 million. Gone. Linda looked at me with pure hatred. You selfish old man. How could you? That money could have set them up for life. You stole from your own family. I stole nothing, I said, standing up. I invested. I invested in dignity. I invested in people who will appreciate it. I looked at Terrence. He was crying, silent tears rolling down his face. Dad, he said. Why? Because you are rich, Terrence, I said. You have this big house. You have the new cars. You have the country club lifestyle. You don't need my little pension money. You are doing so well. Right. I looked at Tiffany. Unless, of course, it is all a lie. Unless you are broke. Unless you needed my money to pay off debts you have been hiding. Tiffany looked down at the table defeated. The secret was out. The lifeline was cut. I buttoned my blazer. Thank you for the meal, I said. It was very enlightening. But I think I will be going now. I have a suite at the Ritz-Carlton waiting for me. It is very comfortable. No basement stairs. I walked toward the door. Melvin George shouted, standing up. You come back here. You undo this. You call that charity and get that money back. I turned in the doorway. No, George, I said. It is done. The wire has cleared. And by the way, you might want to check on your daughter's finances. I hear the bank is investigating some irregularities with her accounts, something about fraud. I walked out of the house. I heard Linda screaming. I heard glass breaking. I heard the sound of a family imploding. I walked down the driveway to my waiting Uber. I did not look back. I had fired the second shot, and this one was a direct hit to the heart. The vibration of my phone on the mahogany table was constant. It was not a call. It was a flood of notifications. I picked up the device and saw that Tiffany had taken the war to a new battlefield. She had posted on the Neighborhood Next Door app. She had posted on the community Facebook page. The headline was bold and calculated. Missing elderly man with dementia. Dangerous. She had written a tearful plea asking neighbors to look out for me. She claimed I had suffered a psychotic break after the death of my wife. She claimed I was violent. She claimed I had stolen a vehicle and money due to my confusion. She warned people not to approach me, but to call the police immediately because I was a threat to myself and others. It was a masterful piece of fiction. She was trying to destroy my credibility before I could destroy her reputation. She wanted to make sure that when I spoke, no one would listen to the ravings of a madman. I did not respond to the posts. I did not comment. I simply took a screenshot of every single lie and emailed them to Regina Holt. It was more ammunition for the defamation suit. 20 minutes later, there was a sharp knock at the door of my suite. It was not room service. It was the police. I opened the door to find two uniformed officers. One was young and had his hand resting near his holster. The other was older with tired eyes. Mr. Carter, the older officer asked, "We received a report regarding a welfare check. We were told there might be a confused elderly gentleman here who could be a danger to the public." I stepped back and opened the door wide. "Please come in, officers," I said. My voice was steady. My posture was upright. I was wearing my silk robe over my dress shirt and trousers. I looked like a man on vacation, not a man on the run. The officers stepped into the suite. They looked around at the luxury. They looked at the bottle of mineral water and the newspaper on the table. They looked at me. They did not see a confused old man. "I assume my daughter-in-law called you," I said. "Or perhaps my son." The younger officer nodded. "They are very worried, sir. They say you ran away. They say you are not well." I walked to the desk. I picked up a leather folder. I had prepared this immediately after leaving the bank yesterday. Logistics is about preparation. "Officers," I said, handing them the folder. "Inside you will find a copy of my driver's license proving my identity. You will find a receipt for this hotel room paid for with my own funds. And most importantly, you will find a medical certificate dated yesterday afternoon from Dr. Sterling verifying that I am of sound mind and excellent physical health." The older officer opened the folder. He read the letter. He looked at the date. He looked at me. "This seems to be in order," he said. "I also have a copy of the restraining order that is currently being filed against Terrence and Tiffany Carter," I added. "I left their home because I was being financially exploited and emotionally abused. The accusations of dementia are a tactic to discredit me and gain control of my assets." The officer closed the folder. The tension left his shoulders. He realized he had been used as a pawn in a domestic dispute. "I apologize for the intrusion." "Mr. Carter," he said, handing the folder back, "we have to follow up on these reports." "I understand," I said. "You are doing your job, but I would ask that you make a note in your official log. Note that I am lucid, note that I am safe, and note that any further calls from the Carter residence constitute harassment and filing a false police report." "We will do that, sir," the officer said. "Have a good evening." They left. I closed the door. Tiffany had played her ace. She had tried to weaponize the law against me, and she had failed. Now it was my turn to go on the offensive. I checked my watch. It was 10 in the morning. Terrence had a tea time at the Ansley Golf Club at 11. He was not playing for fun, he was playing for his life. He was meeting with Mr. Harrington, a real estate developer who was looking for a new supply chain director for his massive construction firm. Terrence had been bragging about this meeting for weeks. He said it was the deal that would save him. He was going to convince Harrington to give him a consulting contract worth 6 figures. I knew Terrence. I knew he would be there early, trying to look successful, trying to hide the smell of desperation. I dressed in my golf attire. I chose a pale blue polo and beige slacks. I put on my cap. I took a cab to the club. When I arrived, I did not go to the guest entrance. I walked straight into the pro shop. The club manager, a man named David, was behind the counter. He looked up and smiled. "Mr. Carter," David said, "your application was approved this morning. Welcome to the club." The initiation fee cleared without issue. "Thank you, David," I said. "I trust my clubs are ready." "They are on cart number 1, David said. I walked out to the course. The sun was high. The grass was impossibly green. I saw them on the putting green. Terrence was there, wearing a shirt that was too tight and laughing too loud at everything the other man said. Mr. Harrington was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and a swing that looked like it could chop down a tree. I drove my cart over to them. I parked it right next to Terrence's bag. Terrence looked up. The color drained from his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Dad," he whispered. "What are you doing here? You cannot be here. This is a private club." Mr. Harrington looked up from his putt. He looked at me, then back at Terrence. "Is this your father?" Harrington asked. "Yes," Terrence stammered. "I am so sorry, Mr. Harrington. He is having some issues. He wanders off. I will call security." I stepped out of the cart. I walked over to Harrington and extended my hand. "Melvin Carter," I said. "A pleasure to meet you, and do not worry about security. I am a member. I joined this morning." Harrington took my hand. His grip was firm. "A member," he said, raising an eyebrow. "That is an expensive membership. Terrence told me you were a retired warehouse worker living on a fixed income." I smiled. Terrence often gets the details wrong. I was a global logistics director. And I invest wisely. Usually. Terrence was sweating. Sweat beads were popping out on his forehead, rolling down his nose. "Dad, please," he hissed. "We are in a meeting. This is business. Go away." Harrington looked at Terrence with a new expression. It was not admiration. It was curiosity. "Let him stay," Terrence Harrington said. "If he is a logistics director, maybe he can add some value to our conversation. We were just discussing risk management in supply chains." I nodded. "Risk management is critical," I said. especially when dealing with volatile assets. You have to know when to hold and when to cut your losses." Harrington laughed. "Exactly. Terrence here was just telling me how he manages his personal portfolio with the same rigor he applies to business. He says stability is key." I looked at my son. He looked like he was about to vomit. He was shaking his head slightly, begging me with his eyes to stay silent, begging me to keep his secret, begging me to save him one last time. "Stability is indeed key," I said slowly, "but transparency is more important. Without transparency, you cannot assess the true liability of an investment." Terrence closed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Harrington asked, leaning on his putter. "I mean that sometimes the books look balanced on the surface," I said, keeping my eyes on Terrence. "But underneath there is leverage, hidden debt, bad loans." "Dad, stop," Terrence whispered. "Mr. Harrington," I said, my voice casual and conversational. "Did Terrence mention that his rigorous personal portfolio management currently involves a foreclosure notice on his primary residence?" Harrington froze. "Foreclosure." I nodded. "And did he mention that he is over $100,000 in debt to private lenders because of gambling on cryptocurrencies? Or that he has been unemployed for 8 months and was hoping your contract would pay off the second mortgage he took out by forging documents?" Terrence made a sound like a wounded animal. "It is not true," he shouted. "He is lying. He is senile. I told you he is sick." Harrington looked at me. I was calm. I was composed. I was dressed in a $3,000 outfit, standing next to a card I owned at a club I had just bought into. Then he looked at Terrence, sweating, shaking, desperate. The truth was written in the sweat on my son's upper lip. Harrington did not get angry. Men like him do not get angry. They get cold. He reached into his bag and pulled out his phone. He typed a quick message. Then he looked at Terrence. "We are done here," he said. "Mr. Harrington, wait," Terrence pleaded, grabbing the man's sleeve. "Let me explain. He is trying to ruin me." Harrington pulled his arm away as if Terrence were contagious. "You ruined yourself," son Harrington said. "I do not do business with people who cannot manage their own house. And I certainly do not do business with liars." He turned to me and nodded. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Carter. Enjoy your round." Harrington walked away toward the clubhouse, leaving his ball on the green. Terrence stood there staring at the retreating figure of his salvation. He turned to me. His face was twisted with hatred. "You destroyed me!" he screamed. "You destroyed everything." "I did not destroy you, Terrence," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights. You were the one standing in the dark." His phone began to ring. It was a shrill sound in the quiet morning air. He looked at the screen. "It is my old boss," he said, his voice trembling. "Why is he calling? I thought he didn't know I was looking for work." "Answer it," I said. He answered. "Hello." He listened. His knees buckled. He fell onto the grass. What he whispered into the phone. "But why? I have been consulting for you." He listened again. The color left his face completely. "Yes, I understand." He dropped the phone on the grass. He looked up at me. "They fired me," he whispered. "They terminated my consulting agreement. They said a client called. They said a client reported that I was a reputational risk. They said I am done." I picked up my golf club. I looked down the fairway. It was a beautiful day for golf. "Mr. Harrington works fast," I said. "He values efficiency." "You told him," Terrence said, tears streaming down his face. "You told him everything." "I told him the truth," I said. "Now get off the green, Terrence. You are holding up play, and you are not a member." I walked to my ball. I took a practice swing. I hit it perfectly. It sailed through the blue sky, landing softly in the center of the fairway. I got into my cart and drove away, leaving my son crying in the rough alone with his lies. The legal papers hit my hotel room door like a battering ram at 6 in the morning. I was awake drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over the city that I used to help supply. I opened the door to a process server who looked bored and tired. He handed me a thick envelope. "You have been served," he said, and walked away. I opened the packet. It was an emergency petition for conservatorship. The petitioner was Terrence Carter. The CO petitioner was Tiffany Carter. The allegation was that Melvin Carter suffered from acute dementia, exhibited erratic spending habits, and posed a danger to himself and his family estate. They were not asking for a conversation. They were asking for ownership of my life. They wanted a judge to declare me incompetent. They wanted to seize my bank accounts. They wanted to annul my donations. They wanted to put me in a cage and throw away the key. I read the affidavit. It was a masterpiece of fiction. It claimed I had wandered away from home in a state of confusion. It claimed I had hallucinated about being wealthy. It claimed I had stolen a vehicle because I did not know where I was. It twisted every act of my independence into a symptom of madness. I called Regina Holt immediately. She answered on the first ring. "I have the papers, Mel," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the sharpening of knives in her tone. "They filed an emergency ex parte motion. That means we have a hearing in 2 hours. They are banking on you not showing up. They are banking on you being confused." "I am not confused, Regina," I said. "I am angry." "Good," she said. "Bring that anger. But wear a suit. And do not say a word unless I tell you to. I will see you at the courthouse." I arrived at the Fulton County Superior Court at 8:30 sharp. I wore my Navy suit. I looked like a senator. I walked through the metal detectors with my head held high. I saw them in the hallway. Terrence looked sick. He was pale and sweating. He looked like a man who was being marched to the gallows. Tiffany, however, looked ready for her close-up. She was wearing a modest gray dress, high-necked and long-sleeved. She wore no makeup. She had pulled her hair back into a severe bun. She looked like a grieving daughter. She looked like a martyr. When she saw me, she did not flinch. She looked through me. She whispered something to Terrence, and he straightened his tie. He would not look me in the eye. He was going to stand in front of a judge and swear that his father was crazy just to save his own skin. We entered the courtroom. It was a cold, sterile room smelling of floor wax and misery. The Honorable Judge Patterson presided. He was a stern man with glasses perched on the end of his nose. He looked at the file. He looked at us. "This is an emergency petition for conservatorship," Judge Patterson said. "Mr. Carter, you are alleging that your father is incapacitated." "Yes, Your Honor," Terrence whispered. He cleared his throat. "Yes." "Speak up, son," the judge commanded. "Yes," Terrence said louder. "He has changed. He is not the man he used to be. He is spending money recklessly. He disappears for days. We are just trying to protect him." The judge nodded. He looked at Tiffany. "And you are the daughter-in-law?" "Yes, Your Honor," Tiffany said, her voice tremulous. "A perfect performance. It breaks my heart to be here. We love Melvin. We welcomed him into our home. We tried to care for him, but he became aggressive. He started hallucinating that he was a millionaire. He took our car. He emptied his savings account and gave it to strangers. He is not safe, Your Honor. If he continues like this, he will be destitute in a month. We just want to preserve what is left for his care. We found a lovely facility for him, a place where he can be safe." She wiped a tear from her eye. It was fake, but it looked real enough from the bench. The judge looked at me. He saw an old man sitting silently. He saw the concerned young couple. I could see the scales tipping in their favor. It is a common story. The senile parent, the dutiful children, the tragedy of age. "Mr. Carter," the judge asked me, "do you have anything to say?" I started to stand, but Regina placed a hand on my arm. She stood up. She was wearing a red power suit that screamed authority. She did not look like a public defender. She looked like justice personified. "Your Honor," Regina said, "my client denies all allegations. In fact, we posit that this petition is not an act of love but an act of fraud, a desperate attempt to cover up financial abuse and secure funds to pay off illegal debts." Tiffany gasped. "That is a lie," she shouted. "We are trying to help him." "Order," the judge banged his gavel. "Counselor, that is a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I do, Your Honor," Regina said. "I have evidence that the petitioners have engaged in a systematic campaign to exploit my client. They have misappropriated funds, they have committed identity theft, and they have conspired to imprison him." Terrence stood up. "That is insane," he yelled. "My father is the one who is crazy. He is lying to you." "Sit down," the judge roared. "Counselor, present your evidence." Regina walked to the center of the room. She did not offer an opening statement. She did not offer character witnesses. She simply placed a laptop on the evidence table and connected it to the courtroom screens. "Exhibit A," Regina said. The screen flickered to life. It was a video. It was security footage from the Serenity Spa. It was high definition. It showed Tiffany standing at the counter. She was wearing a plush robe. She was screaming at the receptionist. The audio was crisp. "It is not an error, you idiot," she screamed on the screen. "It is him. It is your father. He did something. He shut us down." The courtroom was silent. On the screen, Tiffany pulled out her phone. "You are going to drag him back to the house," she hissed into the phone. "I do not care if you have to tie him up." You make him fix this. You make him unlock the money, because if I go to jail over a massage, Terrence, I swear to God, I will divorce you." Regina paused the video on Tiffany's twisted, angry face. The judge looked at the real Tiffany sitting at the plaintiff's table. She had stopped crying. Her face was pale. "This video was taken 3 days ago," Regina said. "Does this look like a woman concerned for her father-in-law's health? Or does it look like a woman concerned that her credit card was declined?" Tiffany stood up. "That is out of context," she shrieked. "I was stressed. He stole our money." "Sit down, ma'am," the judge said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. Regina continued. "Exhibit B." The screen went black. Audio only. It was a recording. It was the sound of static followed by voices. It was the recording from the baby monitor. The recording I had made in the basement. The voice of Tiffany filled the courtroom. Clear, hateful, undeniable. "He is a leech. He has been dragging you down your whole life." Then Terrence's voice. "He gave us $200,000. Then Tiffany again. "That is rent. Back pay for all the years you had to deal with his expectations. Besides, that is just the appetizer." The judge leaned forward. He was listening intently. "We take the money, we dump him on Monday afternoon, and we tell everyone he demanded to be with people his own age." Then the slur, the racial slur she used to describe me. It echoed off the wood-paneled walls. It hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "I am not living with a senile old black man in my basement, Terry. I don't want his smell in my house." Regina let the recording play until the end, until the sound of Tiffany's cruel laughter faded into static. She stopped the tape. She looked at the judge. "Your Honor," Regina said, "the petitioners claim my client is incompetent because he donated money to charity. They claim he is dangerous because he left a house where he was being fed scraps and forced to sleep in a storage room. They claim they want to protect him. But their own words prove they only want to harvest him. They are over $400,000 in debt. They are facing foreclosure. They need his money to survive. This is not a conservatorship hearing. This is a robbery in progress." The judge took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked at Terrence. He looked at Tiffany. He looked at them with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. "Is this your voice on the recording?" the judge asked Tiffany. Tiffany was shaking. She looked at her lawyer, but her lawyer was already packing his briefcase. He knew when a ship was sinking. "It was a private conversation," she stammered. "It was illegal to record us. It was recorded on a baby monitor you left in the room where you forced my client to sleep," Regina countered. "There is no expectation of privacy when you broadcast your conspiracy into the victim's bedroom." The judge banged his gavel. The sound was like a gunshot. Petition denied. The judge boomed. He pointed the gavel at Terrence. "Mr. Carter, you should be ashamed of yourself. You come into my courtroom and lie to my face to steal from your own father." He pointed at Tiffany. "And you. I have heard enough. Not only is this petition denied with prejudice, but I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office." What Tiffany whispered. "You admitted to conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse on tape," the judge said. "That is a crime, and lying in my courtroom is perjury." He turned to the bailiff. "Escort these two out of my building immediately, and ensure Mr. Melvin Carter is given a safe exit." The bailiff moved toward them. Terrence looked at me. His eyes were wide with terror. "Dad," he mouthed. I did not respond. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I looked at Regina and nodded. "Thank you, counselor," I said. We walked out of the courtroom. Behind us, I heard Tiffany screaming at the bailiff. I heard Terrence crying. I heard the sound of their world collapsing. I walked down the marble hallway. My footsteps echoed on the stone. I felt a profound sense of relief, but also a deep hollowness. I had won, but I had lost my son. The legal victory did not bring him back. It only confirmed that he was gone forever. I walked out into the bright Atlanta sun. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and asphalt, but to me, it smelled of victory. I had stopped them. I had protected myself. But the war was not over. I still held the mortgage on their house, and rent was due. The key turned in the lock with a familiar heavy click that echoed in the empty street. I pushed the door open and stepped into the silence of the brownstone. I had sold it for $1.2 million. The new owners, a young couple from New York, were not scheduled to move in for another 2 weeks. I had negotiated a temporary lease back as part of the closing agreement. I told them I needed time to move the last of the furniture. It was a lie. The furniture was gone. The house was empty. I needed time to say goodbye. I walked through the living room. The hardwood floors gleamed under the afternoon sun. I could see the indentations where the sofa had sat for 30 years. I could see the scuff marks on the baseboard where Terrence used to run his toy trucks. It was a mausoleum of memories. I felt a heavy weight in my chest. I had won in court. The judge had vindicated me. I had humiliated Tiffany and exposed Terrence. But standing here in the house where I built my life, I did not feel like a winner. I felt like a man who had survived a bombing only to find his city destroyed. I walked up the stairs. My hand trailed along the banister. I went into the master bedroom. It was stripped bare, no bed, no dresser, just the pale squares on the wallpaper where pictures had hung. I walked to the walk-in closet. This was Ida's sanctuary. She kept her Sunday hats here, her shoes, her secrets. I knelt down in the back corner of the closet. I felt along the cedar floorboards until my fingers found the loose edge. I pried it up. It came away with a soft creak. Beneath the floorboards, wrapped in a silk scarf, was a leather-bound book, Ida's journal. I had not touched it since she died 3 years ago. I had been too afraid. I was afraid of the grief. I was afraid of invading her privacy. But now, after everything that had happened, I needed her. I needed her wisdom. I needed to know if she had seen what I had been too blind to see. I carried the book to the window seat. I sat down and unwrapped the silk. The smell of her perfume, lavender and vanilla, drifted up and filled the empty room. It hit me harder than a physical blow. I closed my eyes and breathed her in. For a moment she was there with me. I opened the book. The pages were filled with her neat cursive handwriting. I started reading from the entries dated 3 years ago, just before her stroke. I read about her garden. I read about her church group. I read about her love for me. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. And then I turned the page to an entry dated 2 months before she died. The handwriting was shaky. The ink was pressed hard into the paper as if she had been writing with anger. I read the first line. Tiffany called me the N-word today. I froze. The breath left my lungs. I read it again. She thought I could not hear her. She was on the phone in the kitchen. She told her mother that she was tired of dealing with that old black woman. She said I was slow. She said I was stupid. She said she could not wait until I was gone so she could remodel the kitchen. I felt a cold rage spreading through my veins. Tiffany, the woman I had welcomed into my home, the woman I had treated like a daughter. She had looked my wife in the face and smiled while hating the color of her skin. I continued reading. Terrence heard her. He was standing right there. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to shout. I waited for him to throw her out. But he did nothing. He just laughed nervously and told her to keep her voice down. He did not defend his mother. He defended his wife's comfort. My hands shook as I turned the pages. There was more. So much more. Ida wrote about missing jewelry, her pearl earrings, her gold bracelet. She had thought she misplaced them. Then she saw the pawn shop ticket in Terrence's jacket pocket when she was doing laundry. He had stolen from his own mother to buy Tiffany a designer bag. Why didn't you tell me, Ida? I whispered to the empty room. Why did you carry this burden alone? I found the answer on the next page. I cannot tell Mel. If I tell him, he will destroy them. He will cut Terrence off. He will throw Tiffany out. And then he will have no one. When I am gone, he will be alone. Terrence is weak, and Tiffany is wicked, but they are the only family he has left. I will swallow this poison to keep the peace. I will let them steal my jewels if it means my husband has a son to visit him on Christmas. I wept. I sat on the floor of the empty closet and wept until my throat was raw. She had protected me. She had sacrificed her dignity to protect my heart. She had endured racism and theft in her own home just so I wouldn't have to face the reality that our son was a failure. I wiped my eyes. I turned to the very last entry. It was dated 2 days before she died. She must have sensed the end was coming. The writing was faint. Melvin, my love, if you are reading this, it means things have gone wrong. I know you. I know you will try to fix them. You will try to save Terrence from himself. You will try to buy their love because you miss me. Do not do it. I read the words again. I read the Do not do it, Mel. If they have driven you to read this, it means they have crossed the line. It means they have taken advantage of your kindness. It means the rot has spread too deep. The last paragraph was underlined twice. If they hurt you, Mel. If they dishonor this house. If they try to take what we built. You have my permission. Stop being a father and start being a general. Teach them the lesson I was too soft to teach. If they go too far, you make them pay. You make them walk through the fire. Do not leave them a penny, Mel. They will only use it to destroy themselves. Burn it down to save them. I closed the book. I wrapped it back in the silk scarf. I stood up. The tears were gone. The sadness was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. I had hesitated. Even in the courtroom, I had held back. I had stopped the conservatorship, but I hadn't destroyed them. I had hoped that maybe the shame would be enough. Maybe losing the court case would wake Terrence up. But reading Ida's words, I realized I had been wrong. They didn't just need a wake-up call. They needed an eviction notice. They had abused my wife. They had stolen her jewelry. They had insulted her race in her own kitchen. And my son had stood by and watched. They were living in a house that I had paid for. They were sleeping in beds that my money had bought, and they were doing it while spitting on the memory of the woman who gave them everything. I took my phone out of my pocket. I dialed Regina Holt. She answered on the first ring. Mel, are you okay? You left the courthouse in a hurry. I am fine, Regina, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of the man who managed supply lines in a war zone. I am at the old house. I found something. What did you find, Mel? I found my instructions, I said. Regina paused. Instructions from whom? From Ida. I walked out of the bedroom and down the stairs. My footsteps echoed with purpose. Regina, I want you to execute the purchase of the note, I said. You mean the mortgage on Terrence's house? Regina asked. Yes, I want you to buy the debt from the private lender. Pay them whatever they want. I want to own the paper on that house by the end of the business day. Mel, Regina warned. If you do that, you become the creditor. I know, I said. And once I own the note, I want you to file a notice of default. Default. But Mel, they just missed the balloon payment. Usually lenders give a grace period. No grace period, I said, cutting her off. They are in default. The contract allows for immediate acceleration of the debt. I want the full amount due immediately. $450,000. They don't have that money, Mel. You know they don't. Exactly, I said. If they can't pay, you can foreclose, Regina said softly. You can take the house. You can put them on the street. That is the plan, Regina, I said. I want them out. I want them out of that house. I want them out of that neighborhood. I want them standing on the curb with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Mel, are you sure? This is your son. He is not my son, I said. He is a thief who let his wife call his mother a racial slur. He is a coward who watched his wife steal his mother's jewelry. He lost the right to be my son when he betrayed her. I walked to the front door of the brownstone. I looked back one last time. I felt Ida's presence. She wasn't sad anymore. She was nodding. She was giving me the strength to do what had to be done. Execute the purchase, Regina, I said. Initiate Plan B. I want them to feel the cold. I want them to know what it feels like to be truly helpless. I will get the paperwork started, Regina said. The foreclosure notice will be served within 48 hours. Good, I said. Make sure the process server knocks loud. I want the neighbors to hear. I hung up the phone. I stepped out into the evening light. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. I clutched the diary to my chest. I am sorry it took me so long, Ida, I whispered. But I am listening now, and I promise you they will learn. I got into the waiting car. I did not look back. The time for mourning was over. The time for justice had arrived, and justice was coming in the form of a foreclosure notice signed by their own father. It was a Tuesday morning when the hammer dropped. I was sitting on the balcony of the Ritz-Carlton enjoying a plate of fresh fruit and watching the city of Atlanta wake up beneath me. The air was crisp and clean, free of the humidity that usually choked the city. I felt a sense of calm that I had not felt in years. It was the calm of a man who had finally taken control of his destiny. Miles away in the suburbs, my son and his wife were waking up to a very different reality. I knew their schedule. I knew the rhythm of their lives. And I knew exactly when the mail carrier would arrive at their door. I had instructed Regina to send the notice via certified mail with a return receipt requested. I wanted proof. I wanted a signature. I wanted to know the exact moment their world fell apart. At 10 in the morning, the mail truck pulled up to the curb. Tiffany was home. She was likely pacing the living room floor, worrying about how she was going to pay for her next Botox appointment or how she was going to explain the missing money to her friends. She heard the doorbell ring. She probably thought it was a delivery. Maybe she thought her credit cards had been magically reactivated and a package from Saks Fifth Avenue had arrived. Hope is a dangerous thing for the desperate. She opened the door. The mail carrier handed her a thick envelope. It was not a cheerful package. It was official business. She signed for it. Her hand probably shook. She closed the door and stood in the foyer, the sunlight filtering through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. She looked at the return address. It was not from a store. It was from the bank that held the second mortgage. Or so she thought. She tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter on heavy bond paper. It was formal. It was cold. It stated that the mortgage note secured by the property located at their address had been sold. The debt had been transferred. The bank she thought she could manipulate with tears and excuses was out of the picture. The new holder of the note was a private entity, an investment firm. She read the name of the company, Ida's Legacy, LLC. She frowned. The name meant nothing to her. She did not know my wife's middle name was May, but she knew her first name was Ida. Yet in her arrogance, she did not make the connection. To her, Ida was just the name of the dead woman whose jewelry she had stolen. It was a common name. It was a coincidence. She dismissed it. What mattered was the second paragraph. She called for Terrence. He was upstairs, probably hiding under the covers, trying to sleep away the shame of his unemployment and his failures. He came down the stairs, his eyes bleary, his shoulders slumped. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 3 days. "What is it?" Tiffany snapped, shoving the letter at him. "We got a letter from the mortgage people. They sold the loan." Terrence took the paper. He read it slowly, his lips moving as he sounded out the words. "Sold," he muttered. "That happens sometimes. Mortgages get bundled and sold. It shouldn't change anything. We just pay a different company." "You are an idiot," Tiffany spat. "Read the next page." Terrence turned the page. His face went gray. The second letter was not an introduction. It was a demand. It was a notice of default and acceleration. Because the previous payments had been missed and the balloon payment date had passed without satisfaction, the new lender was exercising their right to accelerate the debt. The grace period was over. The time for negotiation had passed. The new company Ida's Legacy LLC was demanding payment in full. Not just the interest, not just the missed payments, the entire principal balance, $450,000, payable within 30 days. If the full amount was not received by the deadline, foreclosure proceedings would begin immediately. The property would be seized. The occupants would be evicted. Terrence dropped the letter. It fluttered to the floor like a dead leaf. 30 days, he whispered. "We don't have 30 days. We don't have $30. "This is illegal," Tiffany screamed. Her voice rose to that pitch that used to make me cringe in the basement. "They can't do this. We have rights. We have tenant rights. We have homeowner rights." "Read the fine print," Terrence said, his voice hollow. "It says the terms of the original note allow for immediate acceleration upon default. I signed that. I signed it because I thought I would hit it big with the crypto. I thought I would pay it off in 6 months. I didn't read the clauses." "You fool," Tiffany yelled. She paced the foyer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor that I had paid for. "You signed our lives away. $450,000. Where are we going to get that kind of money? Your father took his million and ran. We have nothing." "Call them," Terrence said. "Maybe we can work something out. Maybe they will give us an extension. Private lenders are people too. Maybe they will understand hardship." Tiffany snatched the letter from the floor. She found the phone number listed at the bottom. She dialed it. She put it on speaker. The phone rang once, twice, then a voicemail picked up. It was a generic automated voice. "You have reached the voicemail of Ida's Legacy LLC. Please leave a message regarding your account number and a representative will get back to you." She hung up. "They aren't answering," she said. "It is a shell company. It is just a machine." "We are going to lose the house," Terrence said. He sank onto the bottom step of the staircase and put his head in his hands. "We are going to be homeless." Tiffany looked at him with disgust. "Get up," she ordered. "Stop crying. We have to fix this. We have to find out who these people are. We have to find a loophole. Go get your laptop. Look up this company. Find out who runs it. Maybe we can blackmail them. Maybe we can sue them. Do something, Terrence." Terrence stood up slowly. He walked into the living room and opened his laptop. He typed in the name of the company, Ida's Legacy, LLC. He searched the Georgia Secretary of State Business Registry. Tiffany stood over his shoulder, breathing heavily. Her panic was turning into a manic energy. She was cornered, and a cornered animal bites. "Here it is," Terrence said. "It was incorporated 3 days ago." 3 days ago, Tiffany asked. "That is right after your father left." "Coincidence," Terrence said. "Look at the registered agent." He pointed at the screen. The registered agent was listed as Regina Holt, Esquire. The address was a law firm in downtown Atlanta, Regina Holt, Tiffany said. "That sounds familiar. Why do I know that name?" Terrence scrolled down. He was looking for the organizers, the owners. "Wait," Terrence said. His voice caught in his throat. "Look at the principal office address." It was the same address as the law firm. But there was a mailing address listed below it, a secondary address for correspondence. Tiffany leaned closer. She squinted at the screen. "That address," she whispered. "That is the Ritz-Carlton." Terrence froze. He looked at the suite number listed. Suite 1400. "That is where Dad is staying," he said. "I went there. That is his room number." The silence that filled the room was heavy and suffocating. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a violent force. The name of the company, Ida, my wife, the timing, 3 days ago, the address, my hotel suite. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a faceless corporation. It wasn't a coincidence. "It is him," Tiffany whispered. Her voice was trembling, but not with fear. It was trembling with a rage so pure it felt hot in the air. "It is your father. He bought the loan. He owns the debt." Terrence stared at the screen. "Dad bought the mortgage," he said. "He is the one evicting us. He is trying to take my house." Tiffany screamed. She grabbed a vase from the entry table and threw it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. "He is trying to put me on the street. That old man. That ungrateful, spiteful old man. I cooked for him. I let him live here. And this is how he repays me. By buying my debt. By holding a gun to my head." She was rewriting history in real time, painting herself as the victim, even as the evidence of her cruelty lay all around us. "He thinks he can win," she hissed. "He thinks he can just buy us out and throw us away like trash. He thinks he is smart." She ran into the kitchen. Terrence followed her. "Tiffany, what are you doing?" She opened the drawer where she kept the silverware. Her hand fumbled around until it closed around a handle. She pulled out a knife. It was a paring knife, small but sharp, used for cutting fruit. "I am going to talk to him," she said. Her eyes were wide and wild. "I am going to go to that hotel, and I am going to make him sign that paper. I am going to make him forgive this debt." Tiffany put the knife down. Terrence pleaded, "You are crazy. You can't go there with a knife. He will call the police." "Let him call them," she screamed. "I don't care. He stole my life, Terrence. He stole my future. That $1 million was ours. This house is ours. He has no right." She pushed past him. She marched to the front door. She was still wearing her house slippers. She didn't care. She was fueled by a narcissist's rage, the kind that blinds you to consequences. "Tiffany, stop!" Terrence yelled, grabbing her arm. She spun around and slashed the air with the knife. "Get off me," she snarled. "You are weak. You couldn't handle him. You let him walk all over us. I am going to finish this. I am going to get what belongs to me." She ran out the door. She got into Terrence's sedan because I had taken the Mercedes. She peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching, leaving black marks on the pavement. Terrence stood in the doorway, watching his wife drive away to confront his father with a weapon. He knew what was going to happen. He knew it was the end, but he didn't call the police. He didn't call me to warn me. He just went back inside and closed the door. He was a coward to the bitter end. I was finishing my fruit when my phone buzzed. It was a text from the concierge downstairs. "Mr. Carter, there is a woman here to see you. She seems very agitated. She says she is your daughter-in-law. She is demanding to come up." I smiled. The fish had taken the bait. "Send her up," I texted back. I stood up and checked the mirror. I looked calm. I looked ready. I walked to the door and unlocked it. I left it slightly ajar. Then I sat back down in my armchair facing the entrance. I waited. I heard the elevator ding down the hall. I heard rapid footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. I heard heavy breathing. The door flew open. Tiffany stood there. Her hair was a mess. Her face was red and blotchy. She was holding her purse clutched tight to her chest, but I could see the outline of the handle inside. "Melvin," she screamed. "Hello, Tiffany," I said. "You look terrible." "You bought the house," she yelled, kicking the door shut behind her. "You bought the mortgage. You are Ida's legacy." "I am," I said. "And rent is due." She marched toward me. Her hand went into her purse. "You are going to cancel it," she said. "You are going to sign a release right now, or I swear to God, Melvin, I will make you sorry." She pulled out the knife. It was small, pathetic, really, but in the hands of a desperate woman, it was dangerous enough. I did not flinch. I did not stand up. I looked at the knife. Then I looked at her. "You brought a fruit knife to a foreclosure," I said. "That is very original." "Sign it," she screamed, lunging forward. I didn't have to move. The door behind her opened again. Two large men in security uniforms stepped in. They had been waiting in the hallway. I had alerted them the moment the concierge texted me. "Ma'am, drop the weapon," one of them shouted. Tiffany spun around. She looked at the guards. She looked at the knife in her hand. She looked at me. She realized too late that she had walked into a trap. She dropped the knife. It fell onto the carpet with a dull thud. The guards grabbed her. They pulled her arms behind her back. She started screaming obscenities, cursing my name, cursing the world. I stood up and walked over to her. I looked down at her twisted face. "You forgot one thing, Tiffany," I said softly. What she spat. "I own the building, or at least I own the debt on the building you live in, and now I have you for assault with a deadly weapon." "Take her away, gentlemen," I said, "and call the police." They dragged her out, kicking and screaming. I picked up the fruit knife from the carpet. I placed it on the table next to my checkbook. It was a souvenir, a memento of the day I won. The lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta is designed to intimidate. It is a cathedral of marble and gold leaf, where the air smells of fresh orchids and old money. The silence is heavy and expensive, broken only by the soft clinking of silver spoons against porcelain teacups. I was sitting in a high-backed velvet chair near the center of the room. I had a pot of Earl Grey tea and a copy of the Wall Street Journal. I was not reading. I was waiting. I knew my daughter-in-law. I knew that a narcissist, when cornered, does not retreat. She attacks. She needs to be the center of attention, even if that attention is her own destruction. I had taken the fruit knife from her in the room upstairs, but I knew she would find another weapon. I knew she would come back. She could not let an old man win. The heavy glass doors at the main entrance flew open with a violence that made the concierge jump. Tiffany marched in. She looked like a woman possessed. Her hair, which she usually spent hours styling, was a tangled mess around her face. Her makeup was smeared dark streaks of mascara running down her cheeks like war paint. She was still wearing the clothes she had thrown on to come confront me, but now they were disheveled and stained with sweat. She stood in the center of the foyer, breathing heavily, her chest heaving. Her eyes scanned the room, wildly darting from table to table until they landed on me. "There he is!" she screamed. Her voice was a shrill shriek that shattered the elegant atmosphere of the lobby. "There is the thief!" Every head in the room turned. Businessmen in bespoke suits lowered their newspapers. Ladies enjoying high tea froze with their cups halfway to their mouths. The pianist in the corner stopped playing mid-measure. Tiffany pointed a shaking finger at me. "You stole my life," she yelled. "You stole my house. You stole my future." I did not move. I did not stand up. I did not look alarmed. I simply folded my newspaper and placed it on the table next to the teapot. I picked up my cup and took a slow, deliberate sip. My calmness infuriated her. It was the gasoline on her fire. She began to run toward me. Her heels clicked frantically against the marble floor, a staccato rhythm of madness. As she ran, she reached into her oversized designer bag. I watched her hand fumble inside. I knew what she was looking for. She pulled it out. It was not a gun. It was another knife. A steak knife she must have grabbed from her own kitchen before rushing back. It was serrated and sharp. "He is ruining us," she screamed, raising the knife above her head. "I am going to kill him." The lobby erupted into chaos. People gasped and scrambled away from her path, knocking over chairs and spilling drinks. A woman near the window screamed, but I sat still. I watched her approach. I watched the madness in her eyes. She was 10 feet away, then 5. She thought she was the predator. She thought she was the avenging angel. She did not realize she was just a moth flying straight into a bug zapper. She lunged. She never reached me. I did not even have to lift a finger. I had alerted the head of hotel security the moment I sat down in the lobby. I told him that an unstable relative might try to cause a scene. I told him to be ready. And he was. Two men in dark suits materialized from the pillars behind me. They moved with a speed and precision that was almost beautiful to watch. One of them caught Tiffany's wrist in midair just as she brought the knife down. He twisted it. I heard a snap. I heard her scream of pain. The knife clattered onto the marble floor, spinning away with a metallic ring. The second guard swept her legs. It was over in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Tiffany hit the ground hard. The air left her lungs in a whoosh sound. She was pinned to the floor, face down, her arm twisted behind her back, her cheek pressed against the cold, hard stone. The guard put his knee in the center of her back, holding her there with the effortless strength of a professional. "Let me go," she shrieked, kicking her legs uselessly. "He is the criminal. He is the one you should arrest. He stole my house." I stood up slowly. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up my cane not because I needed it, but because it added to the image. I walked over to where she lay pinned like an insect. I stood over her. I looked down at her twisted red face. Her eyes were wide with shock and pain. She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw true fear. She realized that she had gone too far. She realized that she was not in control. The lobby was dead silent again. Everyone was watching. Phones were out, dozens of them. Little black rectangles recording every second of her humiliation. I leaned down. I brought my face close to hers. I wanted her to hear me. I wanted only her to hear me. "You just committed assault with a deadly weapon, Tiffany," I whispered. My voice was low, smooth, and cold as ice. "That is a felony. That is 5 to 10 years in a state penitentiary." She stopped struggling. She stared at me, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "I could call the police right now," I continued. "I could have you hauled away in handcuffs. I could press charges. I could ensure that you spend the next decade in a cage wearing an orange jumpsuit that definitely does not match your shoes." Her lip trembled. "Please," she whispered. "But I am not going to do that," I said. Her eyes flickered with confusion. I motioned to the guard. "Let her up," I said. The guard looked at me skeptical. "Sir, she is armed and dangerous." "She is not dangerous," I said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "She is just pathetic. Let her up." The guard hesitated, then stepped back, releasing her arm. Tiffany scrambled to her knees, rubbing her wrist. She looked at me, waiting for the catch. "Get out of here, Tiffany," I said, my voice dropping back to a whisper. "Go back to the house you do not own. Pack your boxes. Wait for the eviction notice." "Why?" she stammered. "Why are you letting me go?" "Because prison is too easy," I said. "In prison you get a bed. You get 3 meals a day. You get a roof over your head. You don't have to worry about rent. You don't have to worry about what people think of you." I leaned closer until I could smell the fear on her. "I want you free, Tiffany. I want you out here in the real world. I want you to experience every single second of what is coming. I want you to feel the cold when you are homeless. I want you to feel the hunger when you have no money. I want you to see the look in your friends' eyes when they realize you are a fraud. I want you to witness the destruction of your life in high definition." I stood up straight and looked at the crowd. I looked at the phones recording us. "And look around you," I said, gesturing to the room. "You are famous now. By tonight, everyone in Atlanta will know exactly who you are. The woman who tried to stab her elderly father-in-law because he wouldn't pay her debts." Tiffany looked around. She saw the cameras. She saw the disgust on the faces of the strangers. She realized that her social standing, her reputation, the image she had carefully cultivated for years was gone. It had been shattered on the lobby floor along with her dignity. She scrambled to her feet. She did not look at me again. She did not grab the knife. She turned and ran. She ran toward the glass doors, her heels clicking frantically, slipping on the marble. She burst out into the street, running away from the hotel, running away from me, running away from the truth. But she could not run fast enough. Within an hour, the video was everywhere. It was on TikTok. It was on Twitter. It was on the local news blog. The headline was brutal. "Crazy Karen attacks elderly man at Ritz-Carlton." I sat in my suite watching the view count climb. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. The comments were merciless. "Look at her face. What a monster. Who attacks an old man? I know her. That is Tiffany Carter. She owes me money. She is disgusting. Hope she rots." Her phone number was doxed within 2 hours. Her social media profiles were flooded with hate. She tried to delete them, but the internet is forever. Screenshots of her lavish lifestyle, her bragging posts, her fake perfect life were being shared side by side with the video of her screaming on the floor. Her brand was toxic. Her reputation was nuclear waste. I received a text from Regina Holt. "Did you see the video, Mel? It is viral." "I saw it," I replied. "This helps our case," Regina wrote. "It proves she is unstable. It proves she is violent. The eviction will be a formality now. No judge will let her stay in that house." "Good," I wrote back. "Proceed with the lockout." I put the phone down. I poured myself another glass of wine. I had not called the police because I knew something better than the law. I knew society. I knew that public shame is a prison without walls. And Tiffany Carter was serving a life sentence. The phone rang again. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered it. "Hello, Mr. Carter," a man's voice said. "This is George Worthington, Tiffany's father." "Ah, George," I said. "I was wondering when you would call. Did you see your daughter's performance?" "I saw it," George said, his voice tight. "It is embarrassing. It is a disaster. Melvin, we need to stop this. This has gone too far. It went too far when she called my wife a slur in my kitchen," George, I said. "It went too far when she stole my money. Look, Melvin," George said, his tone shifting from anger to bargaining. "We are businessmen. We can settle this. I know you are angry. You have a right to be. But destroying her reputation, destroying the family name, it doesn't help anyone." "It helps me," I said. "How much?" George asked. "Excuse me. How much to make it stop? How much to take down the videos? How much to cancel the foreclosure? How much to make you go away?" I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You think you can buy me, George? You think this is about money? Everything is about money, Melvin. Name your price. 10,000, 20,000. I will write you a check right now. Just sign a non-disclosure agreement and leave town." $10,000, I repeated. "You are offering me $10,000 to forget that your daughter tried to stab me." "It is a generous offer," George said, "considering the circumstances." I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I did not negotiate. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole. It was George and Linda. They had come to the hotel. They were desperate. They looked old and tired. I opened the door. George held out an envelope. "Here," he said. "It is a cashier's check, $10,000. Take it. End this." I took the envelope. I opened it. I looked at the check. It was real. I looked at George. I looked at Linda. "You still don't get it, do you?" I said. I took the check in both hands. I ripped it in half, then in quarters. I let the pieces fall to the carpet at their feet. "I have millions, George," I said. "Your money is worthless here. And your daughter is going to learn that actions have consequences that cannot be paid off. Get off my floor." I slammed the door in their faces. I heard Linda sobbing in the hallway. I heard George cursing. I walked back to the window. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and blood red. The city looked beautiful. I was alone. But for the first time in a long time, I was not lonely. I was free. And tomorrow I was going to take my house back. 30 days is a standard unit of time in logistics. It is enough time to ship a container from Shanghai to Savannah. It is enough time to audit a quarterly report. It is enough time to pack a life and move it across the country. But for my son Terrence and his wife Tiffany, 30 days was not enough time to learn how to be adults. It was merely a countdown to their destruction. They spent the first week in denial, believing that I would crack, that I would answer their calls, that I would not actually go through with evicting my own flesh and blood. They spent the second week in panic, trying to secure loans they did not qualify for and calling friends who had already seen the viral videos of Tiffany trying to stab me. They spent the third week in a paralysis of fear, waiting for a miracle that was never going to come. The miracle did not come. The sheriff did. It was 9 in the morning. On the 31st day, I was parked down the street in a rented sedan, watching the sheriff's deputy pulled into the driveway. His car was marked and official. There was no ambiguity about his presence. He walked up the steps and pounded on the door. It was a heavy, authoritative knock that signaled the end of negotiations. Terrence opened the door. He was wearing the same sweatpants he had worn for a week. He looked hollowed out. The deputy handed him the paper. It was the writ of possession, the legal document that transferred the physical control of the property back to the lien holder. Ida's Legacy, LLC. Back to me. I saw Tiffany appear behind Terrence. She was screaming. She was pointing at her phone, probably threatening to call her father or a lawyer or the police. But the deputy was unmoved. He was just doing a job. He gestured to the driveway where a large moving truck had just pulled up. These were not movers hired to carefully pack crystal and wrap art. These were eviction specialists. Their job was to clear the structure of all personal property in the shortest amount of time possible. They marched up the driveway with empty boxes and heavy boots. Tiffany tried to block the door. She stood there like a gatekeeper to a fallen kingdom. The deputy stepped forward and spoke to her. I could not hear the words from my car, but I knew the script. Ma'am, you have 10 minutes to gather your essential items and vacate the premises, or you will be removed for trespassing. She looked at Terrence for help, but my son was already defeated. He sat down on the porch steps and put his head in his hands. He knew the math. He knew the logic. There was no fighting gravity. The movers began to stream into the house. They moved with the efficiency of ants dismantling a carcass. I watched as they carried out the dining room chairs, the chairs I had sat in while Tiffany's parents insulted me. They carried out the flat-screen television, the one Terrence watched while I ate boiled chicken in the basement. They carried out the boxes of designer clothes, the shoes, the handbags, the symbols of the life they thought they deserved. It was a dismantling. It was the physical manifestation of their failure. I watched for an hour. The pile on the curb grew. The beautifully manicured lawn, which Tiffany had forbidden me to walk on, was now covered in debris. It looked like a yard sale gone wrong. It looked like a tragedy, but to me it looked like justice. By noon, the sky had turned a bruise-colored gray. The air was heavy and thick. A storm was brewing over Atlanta. It was fitting. The neighborhood had begun to wake up to the spectacle. Usually an eviction is a quiet, shameful affair. But Tiffany had made so many enemies in this subdivision that her downfall was a spectator event. Mrs. Gable from across the street came out onto her porch. She was holding a cup of tea. She did not look away. She watched. She was the woman Tiffany had reported to the Homeowners Association 3 times for having a mailbox. That was the wrong shade of beige. Mrs. Gable took a sip of her tea and smiled. It was a small, satisfied smile. Then there was Mr. Henderson, 2 doors down. He was out walking his golden retriever. He stopped right in front of the house. Tiffany had yelled at him last month for letting his dog sniff her hydrangeas. She had called him trash. Now, Mr. Henderson stood there while the movers dumped Tiffany's white velvet sofa onto the wet grass right next to the fire hydrant. He let his dog lift its leg on the corner of the sofa. He didn't even pull the leash. More neighbors appeared. They stood in their driveways pretending to check the mail or wash their cars, but their eyes were fixed on the Carter residence. They were witnessing the fall of the queen bee. They saw the piles of shoes, the expensive coats thrown in heaps, the kitchen appliances sitting on the asphalt. It was a display of excess turned into garbage. The rain began slowly at first, a few heavy drops hitting the pavement, creating dark spots on the concrete driveway. Then the sky opened up. It was a torrential downpour, a sheet of water that soaked everything instantly. The white velvet sofa turned a sodden gray. The cardboard boxes began to sag and collapse. The designer clothes that had been thrown onto the lawn were soaking up the muddy water. Tiffany ran out of the house, screaming. She was trying to grab her dresses, trying to drag a mattress back under the porch awning. She was slipping on the wet grass, her hair plastered to her face. My vintage china set, the one she had used to serve her parents, sat in a box that was rapidly disintegrating. The bottom gave way, and I heard the crash of porcelain shattering on the driveway. It was the sound of my history breaking, but I felt nothing. The china was just things, and things can be replaced. Dignity cannot. Terrence stood in the rain. He did not try to save anything. He just stood there, letting the water soak him to the bone. He looked like a man who had woken up from a coma only to find out the world had ended. He looked at the neighbors. He saw their stares. He saw the judgment. He realized that the facade was gone. Everyone knew. They knew he was broke. They knew he was a fraud. They knew he had lost his father's house. The deputy did a final walkthrough. He came out and locked the front door. He placed a padlock on the hasp. He handed the key to the foreman of the moving crew who would turn it over to my lawyer. The house was sealed. The castle had fallen. It was time I started the engine of the car I had rented for this specific moment. It was not the sedan I had been sitting in. I had switched vehicles an hour ago while they were distracted. It was a cherry red Porsche 911 convertible. It was loud. It was fast. It was a midlife crisis on wheels, but I was past midlife. I was in my prime. I put the top down, despite the rain. The interior was waterproof leather, and I was wearing a raincoat. I wanted them to see me. I wanted there to be no glass between us. I drove up the street. The engine roared a deep, throaty growl that cut through the sound of the rain. I pulled up to the curb right in front of the pile of soggy debris that used to be their life. Terrence looked up. He saw the car. He saw me behind the wheel wearing designer sunglasses despite the gray sky. He ran toward me. He stumbled over a box of books and nearly fell, but he caught himself. He grabbed the door of the Porsche, his fingers digging into the wet metal. "Dad," he shouted over the rain. "Dad, please, you can't leave us here. Look at this. We have nothing. We have nowhere to go." I looked at him. I looked at his wet clothes, his desperate eyes. He looked like the boy who used to come running to me when he scraped his knee, expecting me to kiss it and make it better. But I wasn't that father anymore, and he wasn't that boy. Tiffany came running up behind him. She looked like a drowned rat. Her mascara was running down her face in black streams. She looked at the car. She looked at me. "You did this," she screamed. "You are a monster. How can you do this to your own family? We will sue you. We will take everything." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, loud and free. "With what money?" "Tiffany," I asked. "With what lawyer? You are evicted. You are destitute. You are famous on the internet for attacking an old man. You have no leverage. You have no power." "Dad, stop listening to her," Terrence pleaded, gripping the door harder. "Dad, just give me a chance. One chance. I will change. I will do anything. Just let us back in the house. Give me the key. Please, Dad. I am your son." I reached up and took off my sunglasses. I looked him in the eye. The rain dripped from the brim of my hat. I wanted him to see my eyes. I wanted him to see the absolute lack of hesitation. "You had a chance, Terrence," I said. My voice was calm, carrying over the sound of the rain and the engine. "You had 1,000 chances. You had a chance when you married her. You had a chance when she insulted your mother. You had a chance when she stole the jewelry. You had a chance when you fed me garbage. You had a chance in court." I leaned closer to him. "But you didn't take them. You chose her. You chose the easy way. You chose the lie. So now you get the truth. Dad, please give me a break. Forgive me. Forgiveness is God's department," I said. "I am in logistics. And in logistics, when a cargo is toxic, you dump it. You cut your losses, but what do I do?" he cried. I looked at the wet street. I looked at the neighbors watching. I looked back at him. "The opportunity you are asking for." I said, "The chance to be a man. It lay in the choice you made. You chose a wife who despises your heritage and you let her rule you. You chose greed over honor, and you chose wrong. So now you learn. The lesson is responsibility. Use this time. Terrence, use the cold and the rain. Figure out who you are without my money." I put the car in gear. The engine revved. "Let go of the car, Terrence." He didn't let go. I said, "Let go." I tapped the gas. The car lurched forward. Terrence stumbled and lost his grip. He fell back onto the wet pavement, landing in a puddle of muddy water. Tiffany screamed at me. "You will rot in hell, Melvin." "I am already in heaven, Tiffany," I said. "I am free of you." I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The Porsche shot forward. The rear tires spun on the wet asphalt, kicking up a massive rooster tail of dirty water. It sprayed over them. It soaked Tiffany's white dress. It covered Terrence's face. It was a baptism of mud. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I did not need to see them huddled in the rain amidst their ruined possessions. I knew what it looked like. It looked like the beginning of their lives, and the restart of mine. I drove toward the highway, the wind and rain whipping around me, feeling more alive than I had in 40 years. The house was mine, the money was mine, the future was mine, and for the first time I owed nothing to anyone. The silence that followed the eviction was heavy, but the crash that came after was deafening. It took exactly 48 hours for the illusion of my son's marriage to disintegrate completely. I did not need a private investigator to tell me what happened. The gossip mill in Atlanta moves faster than any cargo ship I ever managed. Tiffany left him. She did not leave him because she was heartbroken or because she realized the error of her ways. She left him because he was a bad investment. The asset had depreciated to zero and she liquidated her position. She met a man online, a supposed cryptocurrency visionary from Miami who promised to fly her away from the drama. She packed the few designer bags she had managed to salvage from the curb and left Terrence standing in the parking lot of a Motel 6. I heard later that the visionary was a fraud who stole her watch and left her with the hotel bill, but at that moment all that mattered was that she was gone. She had severed the limb to save herself, leaving my son to bleed out alone. Terrence was truly alone for the first time in his life. He had no wife, he had no house, he had no job, and he had no father to bail him out. He had the sedan, which was overdue for repossession, and a few changes of clothes. The fall was absolute. I kept tabs on him from a distance. I am a father after all. I cannot simply turn off the instinct to protect, even when protection means allowing pain. I knew he spent the first 2 nights sleeping in the parking lot of a 24-hour superstore. I knew he used the public restrooms to wash his face. I knew he was eating food that was marked down for quick sale because it was about to expire. Stale bread, wilted fruit, the kind of food he would have turned his nose up at a week ago. It was painful to watch. It is an unnatural thing for a parent to see their child suffer. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to drive down there to pick him up, to put him in a warm bed and feed him a hot meal. But I remembered Ida's journal. I remembered the disrespect. I remembered the conspiracy to lock me away. If I saved him now, I would only be saving the parasite. I needed the parasite to die so the man could be born. He needed to feel the cold. He needed to know what hunger felt like. He needed to understand that the world owes him nothing. On the 4th night after the eviction, I was staying in a temporary corporate apartment downtown while I finalized my travel plans. It was a modest place but clean and secure. I was reading a book when the buzzer rang. It was late, almost 11 at night. The concierge called up. "Mr. Carter, there is a man here to see you. He says he is your son. Well, sir, he looks like he is in distress. Should I send him away?" I closed my book. I walked to the window and looked down at the streetlights. "Send him up," I said. I waited by the door. I did not unlock it yet. I listened for the elevator. I heard the slow, heavy footsteps coming down the hall. They were the footsteps of a man carrying the weight of the world. There was a knock. It was weak, hesitant. A scratching sound more than a demand. I opened the door, but I kept the security chain engaged. The gap was only 3 inches wide. Through the crack I saw him. He looked like a ghost. His eyes were sunken and rimmed with red. His beard was patchy and unkempt. His clothes were wrinkled and stained with sweat and dirt. He smelled of stale air and desperation. He looked at me through the crack in the door, and for a moment he didn't say anything. He just breathed a rattling sound in his chest. "Dad," he whispered. "Hello, Terrence," I said. My voice was even. I did not offer pity. I offered presence. "Can I come in?" he asked. His voice cracked. "I am so hungry, Dad. I haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days. I am cold. Please, just for a night. Just let me sleep on the floor. I won't touch anything." I looked at him. This was the boy I had carried on my shoulders. This was the man who had tried to bury me. "No," I said. He flinched as if I had hit him. "Dad, please." "Tiffany left me. She took everything. I have nothing. I am sleeping in the car. They are going to tow it soon. I am scared." "I know," I said. "You should be scared. The world is a scary place when you have nothing to offer it." He began to cry. It wasn't the manipulative crying he had used in the past to get money. This was different. This was raw. It was the crying of a child who realizes he is lost in the woods. He slid down the doorframe until he was kneeling on the hallway carpet. He put his forehead against the wood of the door. "I am sorry," he sobbed. "I am so sorry, Dad. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I chose her over you. I let her talk about Mom like that. I let her steal Mom's jewelry. I was weak. I wanted the easy life. I wanted the money. I didn't care about you. I am a piece of garbage. I deserve this." He wept openly, his body shaking. "I missed you, Dad. Not the money. I missed you. When you left that morning and the house was empty, I felt it. I felt the hole in the world. I am sorry I betrayed you. I am sorry I betrayed Mom." I stood on the other side of the door listening to his confession. It was the truth. Finally, after years of lies, he was speaking the truth. But truth without action is just wind. An apology does not fix a broken foundation. He was sorry because he was suffering. I needed him to be strong. I reached for a folder I had left on the entry table. I had prepared it days ago, knowing this moment would come. I slid a single sheet of paper through the crack in the door. It fluttered down and landed next to his knee. He looked at it. He wiped his eyes with dirty hands. "What is this?" he asked, his voice thick with tears. "It is a list," I said. He picked it up. He squinted at it under the hallway light. Amazon Fulfillment Center, UPS sorting facility, construction labor ready, waste management. "It is a list of warehouses and labor sites hiring immediately," I said. "Night shift, loading docks, heavy lifting, minimum wage, no experience required." He looked up at me through the crack. His eyes were confused. "Jobs," he said. "You are giving me a list of jobs. I am giving you a lifeline." "Terrence," I said, "you said you are hungry. That list is how you eat. You said you are cold. That list is how you pay for a room." "But Dad, I have a degree. I was a consultant." "You were a fraud." I corrected him. "You forged documents. You lived on credit. You have no references. You have no reputation. In the corporate world, you are dead. But in that world," I pointed to the paper, "you are just another man with 2 hands and a strong back." He stared at the paper. "You aren't going to help me," he whispered. "You have millions, Dad. You could write a check and fix this in a second." "I already wrote the check, Terrence," I said. "I wrote check after check for 30 years. I paid for your school. I paid for your car. I paid for your house. And look where it got you. It made you weak. It made you entitled. It made you a thief." I leaned closer to the crack in the door. "If I give you money now, I kill you. If I let you in this room, I rob you of the only chance you have to become a man. You need to rebuild Terrence, and you need to do it from the ground up. You need to sweat for your bread. You need to ache for your bed. You need to know the value of $1 because you bled for it." He looked at the paper again. He looked at the list of hard, brutal jobs, jobs he would have laughed at a month ago. "I can't do this," he said. "It is too hard." "Then you will starve," I said simply. "The choice is yours." I started to close the door. "Wait!" he shouted. He scrambled up. "Wait." I stopped. "If I do this," he said, his voice trembling, "if I take these jobs, if I work, will you talk to me again?" I looked him in the eye. "When your hands are calloused," I said. "When you have blisters on your fingers and an ache in your back that won't go away. When you can show me a pay stub that you earned with your own sweat. Then you come back, then we talk. But not before." I closed the door. I slid the deadbolt home. I stood there listening. I waited for him to scream. I waited for him to pound on the door. I waited for him to curse me. But there was silence. For a long time there was nothing but the hum of the building. Then I heard a rustle of paper. He had picked up the list. I heard his footsteps again, slow, heavy, moving away toward the elevator. I walked to the window and looked down. 5 minutes later I saw him walk out of the building. He walked to his car. He did not get in immediately. He stood under the streetlight reading the paper I had given him. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He straightened his shoulders. It was a small movement, but I saw it. He got into the car. He started the engine. He drove away, not toward the highway, but toward the industrial district south of the city, toward the warehouses. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I sat down in the dark. I touched the watch on my wrist. It was my father's watch. He had been a bricklayer. His hands were like sandpaper. He used to tell me that a man who cannot build is a man who can only destroy. Terrence was gone. My son, the consultant, was dead. But maybe, just maybe, my son, the man, was being born tonight. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hand was shaking slightly. It is the hardest thing a father can do, to close the door on his child, to watch them fall and refuse to catch them. But I knew Ida was watching. I knew she understood. We had raised him with love, but we had forgotten to raise him with grit. Now life would teach him the lesson we had skipped. I went to bed. I slept soundly for the first time in months. The nightmare was over. The rehabilitation had begun. Tomorrow I would book my ticket. I had a boat to catch. The water of the Aegean Sea is a color that does not exist in Atlanta. It is a deep, shifting blue that looks like melted sapphires poured over diamonds. I stood at the railing of the 40-foot catamaran, letting the salt spray mist against my face. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of olives and lemons from the coast of Santorini. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that tasted purely of freedom. It has been exactly 1 year since I walked out of that basement. 1 year since I cut the toxic cords that were strangling my life. I looked down at my hands gripping the polished teak rail. They were steady, they were tan. The age spots seemed to have faded under the Mediterranean sun. I caught my reflection in the glass of the cabin door. The man staring back at me did not look 69 years old. He looked 50. The stoop in my shoulders was gone, replaced by the upright posture of a man who answers to no one. My eyes, which had been dull with grief and betrayal, were now clear and sharp. I had lost 20 pounds, not from stress, but from swimming every morning and eating fresh fish caught off the side of the boat. Elena stepped out of the cabin. She was wearing a white linen dress and a wide-brimmed hat. She held 2 glasses of chilled Assyrtiko wine. She handed one to me and smiled. Elena was a retired professor of art history. I met her in a museum in Florence 6 months ago. She did not know about my money when we met. She only knew that I had an opinion on Renaissance sculpture that made her laugh. She was kind, she was intelligent, and she had her own life. We were companions, not dependents. It was the healthiest relationship I had experienced since Ida passed. "To another beautiful day," Elena said, clinking her glass against mine. "To freedom," I replied. We sat on the deck, watching the sun begin its slow descent toward the horizon. It was a golden hour, a time of day that makes everything look magical. But my peace was not just about the view, it was about the silence of my phone, the silence of demands, the silence of drama. I picked up my tablet. Regina Holt sent me a quarterly report on my investments. I scanned the numbers. My portfolio was up. The supply chain logistics company I had consulted for part-time was thriving, but there was another section in the report, a personal section. Regina knew I liked to keep tabs, not because I wanted to intervene, but because I needed to know that justice was still being served. I scrolled down to the section titled Status Update, T. Carter and T. Jenkins. She had reverted to her maiden name. I read the report on Tiffany. It was a grim portrait of a life dismantled. She was currently employed as a cashier at a discount grocery store in a rundown strip mall on the outskirts of DeKalb County. The report detailed her schedule. Shift starts at 6 in the morning. She stands on her feet for 8 hours scanning generic brand cereal and frozen dinners for people who treat her with the same disdain she once treated me. I closed my eyes and pictured it. I could hear the incessant beep of the scanner, the mechanical rhythm of her new life. Beep scorn, beep misery, beep regret. She had lost everything. The designer clothes were sold for pennies to pay rent. The luxury car was repossessed. The friends she tried to impress had vanished the moment the scandal broke. She was living in a studio apartment above a laundromat. Regina noted that the building had a pest problem and the heating was unreliable, but the physical poverty was not the worst part. The report mentioned her appearance. She had aged rapidly. The stress and the bitterness had etched deep lines into her face. In a desperate attempt to cling to her youth, she had spent her last few dollars on cheap black market fillers for her lips and cheeks. The result was tragic. Her face looked lumpy and distorted, a grotesque mask of the beauty she used to weaponize. She was alone, angry, and aging in a room that smelled of other people's dirty laundry. She still blamed me. Regina wrote, "She tells anyone who will listen that her billionaire father-in-law stole her inheritance. She plays the victim to an audience of none. She has learned nothing. Her prison is not the studio apartment. It is her own mind." I felt a flicker of pity, but I snuffed it out quickly. Pity is for those who suffer misfortune. Pity is not for those who engineer their own destruction. Tiffany had held the knife. She had made the choice. She was exactly where she belonged. I scrolled past her section. I did not want to dwell on her. I wanted to see the other update, the one that mattered. Status update, Terrence Carter. I hesitated before reading. My heart still clenched when I thought of my son. The wound of his betrayal had scabbed over, but it was still tender underneath. I had not spoken to him in 12 months. I had stuck to my word. I closed the door, and I locked it. I read the text. Regina had included a photograph. It was not a surveillance photo. It was a screenshot of a text message Terrence had sent to her office asking her to forward it to me. I opened the image. It was a picture of a pair of hands. They were rough hands. The skin was dry and cracked. There were calluses on the palms, thick and yellow pads of skin built up from friction. There was a healing cut across the knuckles of the thumb. The fingernails were short and clean, but stained with grease and oil. They were not the soft, manicured hands of a consultant. They were not the hands of a man who typed on a keyboard. They were the hands of a worker. They reminded me of my father's hands. They reminded me of my own hands 40 years ago when I started on the loading docks. Below the photo was a message, Dad. I know you might not read this. I know I lost the right to talk to you. But I wanted you to see this. I made supervisor at the warehouse this week. I manage a team of 20 guys. We move 3,000 units a shift. It is hard work. My back hurts every day, but I sleep at night. I sleep because I earned the bed I am lying in. I read the words again. My throat felt tight. The message continued. I rented a small house. It is not much. It has 2 bedrooms and a small yard. I pay the rent with my own money. No loans, no credit cards. Just my paycheck. I bought a second-hand truck. It runs good. I fixed the radiator myself. I watched a video online and I did it. I smiled. A small, proud smile broke through my reserve. He fixed the radiator. He used his hands. He solved a problem. There was one more paragraph. I know I can never pay you back for the money I wasted, but I am paying back the debt I owe to myself. I am becoming the man you tried to raise. I am sorry it took losing everything to find him. If you are ever in town, I would like to buy you a beer. With my own money. Just a beer. Dad. Nothing else. I put the tablet down on the table. My vision was blurry. The sun was touching the water now, painting a path of fire across the sea. Elena touched my arm. Mel, are you okay? I looked at her. I am better than okay, I said. I think my son finally grew up. I picked up my phone. It was a satellite phone capable of reaching anywhere in the world. I opened the messaging app. I typed in a number I had deleted but never forgotten. I looked at the photo of his hands one more time. Those hands had pushed me away, but now they were reaching out, not for a handout, but for a handshake. I typed a reply. Congratulations on the promotion. Supervisor. Hard work clears the mind. I am currently in the Mediterranean, but I will be docking in Savannah next month. I will take you up on that beer. Make it a lager. I paused. Then I typed one more line. And Terrence, keep saving your money. You are going to need it. A man needs a house of his own. I still have your grandfather's watch. It needs a wrist that knows the value of time. I think it might fit you now. I hit send. I watched the message status change from sent to delivered. I waited. A moment later, 3 dots appeared. The reply came instantly. Thank you, Dad. I will be there. The first round is on me. I turned off the phone. I did not need to say anything else. The connection had been reestablished. Not the connection of dependence, but the connection of respect. He was no longer a child asking for candy. He was a man offering a drink. I stood up and walked to the edge of the boat. I raised my glass of wine to the setting sun. The sky was a brilliant violet now fading into the black of night. I thought of Ida. I thought of the basement. I thought of the rain on the day of the eviction. It all seemed so far away now, like a story that happened to someone else. I had lost a house, a pile of bricks and wood, but I had gained a life, and in the fire of that destruction, I had forged a son. To you, Ida, I whispered to the wind, you were right. We had to burn it down to save him. I drank the wine. It was crisp and cold. I felt the gentle rock of the boat beneath my feet. I was thousands of miles from Atlanta, thousands of miles from the pain I was. Melvin Carter. I was a father. I was a survivor, and I was finally, truly home. I turned back to Elena and smiled. What shall we do for dinner? I asked. She smiled back. I was thinking, fresh lobster. Sounds perfect, I said. As the sun disappeared completely, leaving only the stars to guide us, I knew that the best years of my life were not behind me. They were right here, right now. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready for whatever came next, because I knew I could handle it. I had handled the worst my family could throw at me, and I had come out stronger. The ocean stretched out before us, infinite and open, just like my future. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is refusing to save them. For years, I thought being a good father meant providing a safety net, but I realized too late that I had turned that net into a hammock. By shielding my son from every consequence, I had robbed him of his own strength. True dignity isn't found in a bank account or a big house. It's found in the quiet confidence of knowing you can stand on your own 2 feet. I had to lose my home to find my freedom, but in doing so, I gave my son the greatest gift of all, the necessity to grow up. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories about resilience and justice. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.